afternoon session of the Portland City Council. Keelan, good afternoon. Please call the roll.
Good afternoon. Gonzalez.
Here.
Maps.
Here.
Rubio.
Here.
Ryan.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. Now we'll hear from legal counsel on the rules of order and decorum. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Portland City Council. To testify before council in person or virtually, you must sign in advance on the council agenda at www.portland.gov/council/agenda. Information on engaging with city council can be found on the council clerk's webpage. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during city council meetings. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. A timer will indicate when your time is done. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If you cause a disruption, a warning will be given. Further disruption will result in ejection from the meeting. Anyone who fails to leave once ejected and is subject to arrest for trespass. Additionally, council may take a short recess and reconvene virtually. Your testimony should address the matter being considered. When testifying, 1, state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. 2, disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. 3, for testifiers joining virtually, please unmute yourself once the council clerk calls your name. Thank you.
All right, thank you. First up is 2 items, 774, a resolution, and 775, an emergency ordinance.
774, authorize a term sheet to serve as a guide for project agreements for the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry Central City Master Plan District. Item 775, authorize intergovernmental agreement between Prosper Portland and Bureau of Transportation to construct the new Water Avenue project in Central East Side in the amount up to $16,900,000.
Council, this is a 2-part item, the first being a resolution to approve a term sheet between the City of Portland, Prosper Portland, and the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, outlining the key terms and conditions for partnership to implement the OMSI Central City Master Plan. And the second item will be an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between Prosper Portland and the Bureau of Portland Transportation to construct the new Water Avenue project in Portland's Central East Side in the amount of up to $16.9 million. This has been a long-term effort driven by Prosper Portland, various city bureaus, and our community partner OMSI that began with the creation and coordination for the approval of the museum's Central City Master Plan. And I'm very pleased to see this next phase of the partnership coming to council today that advances the actual implementation of OMSI's Central City Master Plan. As such, this is an auspicious occasion. I'm joined by my fellow co-sponsors, Commissioner Maps and Commissioner Rubio, who will each say just a few words, and then we'll move right into the presentation. I don't know if there's a particular order.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I want to echo my enthusiasm for these items and the thoughtfulness by which this partnership between Prosper Portland, the city bureaus, and OMSI has come together. Planning and developing large sites like OMSI is very complex and requires all of us to be at the table. And today you'll hear about significant public benefits coming from this partnership, including affordable housing, new job opportunities, and economic growth, and an active waterfront that restores the presence of our Indigenous community. You will also hear about some of the significant public investments we are making into this project, such as $10 million in remaining TIF resources from the current district, $6 million from the state that was specifically set aside by the legislature last session after months of advocacy and coordination by my office and our excellent government relations team here at the city, and also Parks SDCs and PBOT SDCs, which you will hear more about from as well. And even the potential for additional future support through a new TIF district or through creative financing like an LID. When people say that we need to do more to support housing development in Portland and revitalize our central city, this is a perfect example of us doing more. And as we'll hear from the team in a moment, these investments are backed by years and years of partnership and deliberate decision-making. They're aligned with our comprehensive plan, and they build upon our prior investments in the Portland streetcar and Tillicum Bridge, They're rooted in our history and they look forward to the future. And I look forward to seeing the presentation and hearing from these partners today. Because we know that sites like this one, projects that have come together like this one with all the hard work, all the brilliance, and the teamwork from some of the folks that we'll hear from today, this is an example of the future of Portland. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Commissioner Mapps.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio. Well, folks, if you take a look around the room, you can tell that this is a significant day for Portland. And I'll tell you why. The legislation before us today is about more than infrastructure. It's about transforming the OMSI district into a vibrant hub for education, innovation, and community life. Now, during my time on this council, our city's public works bureaus have worked hard to ensure that the infrastructure in this district is sturdy enough to form the foundation of Portland's next new neighborhood. Now, the new Water Avenue project is an important step towards that reimagined OMSI district. I want to thank all the staff over at PBOT who have helped get us to this moment. And now, without further ado, I will turn the floor over to our panel to tell us more about these two ordinances.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Mapps. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Daniel Avera for the record. I am the Deputy Seat Administrator for the Community and Economic Development Service Area. And like this morning's ordinance regarding the Hollywood Hub, I am thrilled to introduce these items today because much like this morning, the theme of partnership is core to the milestone. Thanks for joining us, Aaron. Thanks, James. I've been a part of the discussions between Prosper Portland, the city bureaus, and OMSI as they developed this term sheet and as they outlined the first phase of the project, the design and construction of New Water Avenue. The City Central City 2035 plan offers policies, goals, and tools that guide our Central City's growth, and this includes the OMSI district, which requires a Central City master plan for redevelopment. And through this tool, OMSI and its partners established an urban form that is the foundation for future development both along its waterfront and within the district. It set building heights and a range of the size and the infrastructure required to support the mix of uses, ensuring cohesive and coordinated growth. I'd like to really take a moment to acknowledge that although this process started before our transition, it really embodies the spirit of what we're looking for with the new form of government. Through Prosper's leadership and coordination with the infrastructure bureaus, we were able to come to the table with OMSI as a strong partner, as a coordinated partner, and I think it speaks well for our future that this project is off to a strong start because of that coordination leadership. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kimberly Branham, Prosper Portland's Executive Director. Thank you.
Thanks, Donnie. Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Kimberly Branham, Executive Director of Prosper Portland. And we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So joined by Aaron and James, who will introduce themselves when they speak. But what you see here, as Donnie mentioned, is representative of the deep partnership across the city and community partners. So as the mayor mentioned, we have two items before you today. The term sheet, which serves as a framework for a partnership to implement the Central City Master Plan, and then the IGA to effectuate investment in New Water Avenue. Next slide, please. Donnie touched on the Southeast Quadrant Plan and the Central City 2035, but as you might recall, in 2015, the Southeast Quadrant Plan put forth 4 big ideas, including the innovation quadrant concept, making sure that there was a density of employment uses, a more active waterfront, as well as the idea of having more dense mixed-use corridors. That got embedded within the Central City 2035, along with the other quadrant plans. And so what we are talking about today really does implement on this city-adopted policy. Next slide, please. One of the key elements of the Central City 2035 was a new concept. Master plans are not a new concept, but the Central City Master Plan, as it's currently articulated in code, is new in that there are some specific sites across the city, including the OMSI district, as well as Broadway Corridor and the PPS's Profit Center, where a central city master plan is required. These are large catalytic sites that don't have the full infrastructure that are necessary to build out, and so it requires a pretty careful outlining between infrastructure and vertical development. So the intent is to establish an urban design framework, make sure that there are adequate utilities, both stormwater, transportation, sewers, and then kind of set the glass container in which development can occur. For the property owners or developers, the value is that you can move floor area ratio, you can move the development capacity across from property to property. And so that's really valuable rather than having to, on a transaction by transaction basis, try to get FAR bonuses. Within OMSI, this actually enabled some residential unit development up to 1,200 units that otherwise would not be allowed by right, but are allowed because of the master plan. Next slide, please. Okay, so you see here just a snapshot of those glass containers, what can be built. So you'll see that there are heights that are set. There's an orientation, but it's pretty flexible. So questions around the kinds of things that can be built can change over time. But this is what Design Commission approved. And as you'll see, the OMSI portion, they could build between 600 and 2.5 million gross square feet. So we're talking about quite a bit of development capacity. And with and across the entire OMSI district, you're talking about between 1.2 and 4.4 million square feet. Next slide, please. So we've been talking about some of the key milestones that you see on top. So the quadrant plan, the inclusion of not just OMSI properties, but the community college, opera, and then Design Commission approval. And since that approval of the Central City Master Plan, Prosper Portland and the city have been working with OMSI in earnest to negotiate a term sheet, which you have before you. And then on the funding side, want to recognize, and I know our partners will speak to this too, but Metro has been a really important partner, granting $750,000 to OMSI and the city for to work in partnership with a coalition of Indigenous and tribal leaders on the visioning for the waterfront park. We also appreciate the investment from the state of Oregon, which has invested $11 million in 2 tranches towards New Water Avenue. And then, of course, Metro's commitment to the waterfront education park. So we are leveraging those investments in the term sheets that we are bringing before you today. Next slide, please. So the good news, and this is not always the case when you come to the table, but the good news was that there were a tremendous amount of aligned values and priorities as OMSI and community partners and the city came to the table to negotiate this development, or the term sheet in front of you. We wanted to see the vision come to life. We wanted to make sure that we were coordinated, not just with the OMSI properties, but with advancing the Center for Tribal Nations and that vision, an active waterfront. And so there was a lot that we held in common. And then there were some key priorities that were important to OMSI, such as really making sure that New Water Avenue was fully funded and the gap was closed, and then making sure that the development of the parcels created ongoing revenue for OMSI's operations. On the city side, it was really important to us that there was vertical development that accompanied the infrastructure investment, and we wanted to see multimodal use for New Water Avenue to improve ped and bike access there. Next slide, please. Okay, so just one of the things that was happening concurrent with the negotiations was the exploration process for new tax increment finance districts. So about $19 million remains in the Central East Side TIF district. That's the current TIF district, and that's dedicated to strategic sites such as OMSI and the workshop blocks, as well as to loans and grants for businesses of all sizes. And so that's where the $10.9 million included in the IGA comes from. As you're aware, there is a conversation about the potential for a new tax increment finance districts. We're calling that the Central East Side Corridor TIF District. You see that in orange on the slide. And so that's where future tax increment finance resources that are mentioned in the term sheet for things like affordable housing or a district parking solution, or if there were other infrastructure needs, that's where that would come from. So council hasn't yet decided, and so the term sheet doesn't commit council to anything, but that is referenced in the term sheet as a potential source in the event that council does approve the creation of a new TIF district. Next slide, please. The priorities advance, obviously, the comprehensive plan as defined in Central City 2035, but they also make real progress on key priorities like our economic development strategy, Advance Portland, which calls for just this kind of catalytic public-private partnership and the investments and the market signals that it sends to be moving forward on key projects within the Central City, as well as making sure that we have good access to quality jobs by supporting density and supply of mixed income housing near job centers. This also supports the housing production strategy, which was just adopted, both by supporting affordable housing as well as mixed income housing, and then advances Central City in motion by improving the two-way cycle track on New Water Avenue for the really to make sure that freight continues to be able to move and that you have fewer areas where there might be areas of conflict. Next slide, please. Okay, before I turn it over to Aaron, I just want to express, really on behalf of the entire Prosper Portland team, our deep appreciation. So huge appreciation to the OMSI and Edlin and Co team, to the Northwest Native Chamber and CritFic. It's been really heartening to be in just such close partnership for so many years and to see us get to this point. I also want to appreciate the incredibly dedicated city staff who, as we know, have a lot of priorities, but spent their time and talents to make sure that we were able to speak with one voice and come to the table and get to agreements. And then I just have to appreciate the team at Prosper Portland, so Amy and Lisa and Paul and David, for orchestrating so much of this. I think Amy's been on this project, and Lisa as well, probably for more than almost a decade. And so it's really an exciting moment to be here today. And just we are so grateful for all of the people who you see listed here, who also are here to answer questions, because there are a lot of technical things and we have the subject matter experts in the room. So thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners, I'm so happy to be here in front of you this afternoon. I'm Erin Graham, the President and CEO of OMSI. And as you know, OMSI is a cornerstone institution for our community, from standpoint of education, engagement, bringing diverse communities together to learn together, live together, and ultimately to thrive together. And we are so excited to be here in front of you today at this precipice of really launching this vision for the OMSI district, which is to create a new neighborhood for Portland that is rooted in arts, innovation, science, and cultural learning, and to use the opportunity of this district to reestablish tribal presence on the Willamette River where it has been fully erased. I want to express my very deep appreciation for the city partnership that is taken to reach this point. I remember really clearly when Mayor Wheeler came to our board retreat in 2019 and said, this is a priority for the city. And I know a lot has happened since then, but I appreciate the attention and the vision and the work together to continue to move this forward and realize that we have to have big vision for the future of the city, for the revitalization of the city, and the OMSI district can be a really big part of that. The $15.4 million articulated in the infrastructure investments, as you've heard in the term sheet, are critical. They will go into New Water Avenue and into utilities in the district that will help us transform surface parking lots and brownfields into park areas, mixed-use development, and housing. And we could not have done it without, or be at this point, without the public-private partnership and these types of investments. OMSI has self-funded most of the planning work that has gotten us to this point. We are grateful for the state's generosity and for the advocacy of commissioners in helping to direct state funds toward infrastructure, and now to reach this point with the investment of TIF funds and SDCs in the future of the project. And we also know that this project is critical, as I mentioned, to restoring tribal presence in the Willamette River. And I will let my colleague James speak more to that. And Asia Dakota with CRIPFIC is here as well with us this afternoon. This project has the great opportunity to also create a tremendous number of jobs during construction and in full operation for the OMSI district, in addition to tax revenue for the city of Portland. And ultimately, with our projections, it will generate more than $1 billion in private investment over the next 10 to 20 years in Portland. It is important because it helps to guarantee the growth and sustainability of our city, and really important because it also helps to sustain OMSI and the critical mission-based work that we do throughout Portland and the state, and the financial sustainability and economic prosperity of our partners. So I really encourage you to vote yes today on the term sheet, and thank you so much for your support in helping us reach this point.
Sure, everybody. Okay, can we hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. I did this last time. Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners. My name is James Allen Parker. I'm an enrolled citizen for the Chippewa Cree Tribal Nation, and I serve as the Executive Director for the Northwest Native Chamber, who act as the stewards for the community vision for the Center for Tribal Nation. The Center for Tribal Nations is the first of its kind, Native-led urban development that establishes a Native presence on the Willamette River while creating space for a new era of Indigenous expressions of excellence. For thousands of years, Native people came together in this place, forging intertribal bonds and building community through trade and cultural gatherings. The Center for Tribal Nations reclaims that crucial connection to the river, celebrating the Native cultures and values that have endured through centuries of colonization and displacement. Here, where ancestors once gathered for commerce, a new Native economy will emerge, seeded with tribal investment and ownership and supporting Native entrepreneurs and businesses. Where days-long events and ceremonies once brought tribal communities together, Native artists, musicians, craftspeople, and educators will have a place to showcase and share Native culture and traditions. Where Native children once played together along the riverbanks, a new generation of young people will find a cultural home that builds a sense of belonging and creates exciting possibilities for the future. The Center for Tribal Nations is uncompromising in its vision, centered on the key framework of being a model for Native-led, community-centered urban development, growing a self-sustaining economy for long-term prosperity, and Indigenous by design with environmental responsibility built in. OMSI has worked alongside tribal governments, Native and Indigenous communities to create a vision for a Center for Tribal Nations and a new waterfront education park within the OMSI district. Through these projects, the OMSI district will partner to restore tribal presence along the shores of the Willamette and Portland's Center City, offering a unique opportunity to honor and celebrate Indigenous culture and build shared prosperity for generations to come. We urge the Portland City Council to approve the necessary infrastructure funding to ensure this vision is realized. Together in 2020, Indigenous organizations, OMSI, and the City of Portland received Equitable Development Grant as part of Metro's 2040 planning. And it's, at that time, was working with the affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians, and they led extensive tribal outreach back in January of 2021. This led to the resolution of support representing nearly 50 tribes in the Northwest. The Center for Tribal Nations Advisory Committee, made up of tribal leaders, community stakeholders, then led a process to consider the optimal combination of program uses and activities, as well as the value and principles that should guide future efforts to bring this vision to life. The district's development will create significant economic opportunities for Indigenous businesses and tribally owned entities, enabling us to create intergenerational prosperity. Your support will enable this inclusive, community-focused project to move forward. The $15.4 million investment described in the term sheet is critical to laying the foundation for the Center for Tribal Nations. This funding will unlock vertical development and ensure the district becomes a platform for cultural and economic exchange. Finally, the OMSI district represents a shared vision. With strong support from tribal communities, OMSI, and the other partners, your investment will bring this collaborative, culturally significant project to life. The Northwest Native Chamber has done an incredible amount of work to get this point, nearly 3 years of continued engagement with the advisory committee to continue to inspire and inform the vision for the Center for Tribal Nations. We have selected an Indigenous-led architectural team to bring the vision to life and continue to secure funding from key partners, including Meyer Memorial Trust and others in philanthropy, Metro, Multnomah County, and other government partners. The Center for Tribal Nations Advisory Committee created a vision for the CTN. Dreamt into existence for decades, the Center for Tribal Nations celebrates and catalyzes the power of Indigenous peoples' cultures and presence on the river. Finally, the Center for Tribal Nations will stand strong on the shores of the Willamette River in the Central East Side, just across from downtown Portland, continuing to build Portland as an international model for intentional development and as a shining beacon, not just for this country, but for the world. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a few more slides. We're going to get into some, Amy's going to get into some details. So if you can go forward just a few slides. Here you can keep moving forward, but these are some of the beautiful images of the Waterfront Education Park and the Center for Tribal Nations that James was discussing. Should be on.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I hear me. Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Amy Nagy. I'm a development manager with Prosper Portland. I've also been a project manager working with OMSI for not a full decade, 2018. So I wanted just to take a few minutes to orient you all both to the plan itself, as well as the partnership areas that informed the kind of bounds of the term sheet that we have in front of you today. So what you're looking at, despite from the images, is a table that highlights the categories of the partnership. The next row down are the city partners that are involved in each one of those areas. As we've said, it's a robust effort. And then just below that is OMSI and its partners that anticipate working in these areas. So the top three are the open space and waterfront, as well as the infrastructure, thinking about the streets and the utilities, and the vertical development that we are aiming to see. So looking at the kind of the waterfront, OMSI really aims to have a waterfront education park. They've got a mile-long waterfront, what they want to really re-envision with kind of three different reaches. The first reach is dedicated to the ecological restoration, and it's an opportunity also to test the feasibility of a mitigation bank that the city has been working on for quite some time as well, so it's another great partnership. The middle reach is dedicated to education and access to the water, bringing those classroom opportunities outside and further expanding some of that education. And then the third reach, or the southern reach, is in Urban Plaza, and it sits up high on the campus, beautiful views of the west side, and is where OMSI imagines holding its community events, its galas, etc., that will be also accessible to the public. This is a key partner, particularly with Bureau of Environmental Services, who in partnership with Commissioner Mapps's office, has been working on the concept of a mitigation bank for some time. It also includes potential investment from Portland Parks and Recreation, who is holding their systems development charges to invest in some of the public aspects of that waterfront. And then OMSI, and as Aaron has mentioned, is partnering with CRITFIC, who is going to be issuing an RFP relatively soon on the design for that waterfront education park that's achieving all of those goals and is also influenced by kind of the native vision and objectives for the area. The second aspect is the infrastructure. So there'll be 3 new streets going in. As Kimberly had mentioned, New Water Avenue is a really important one within OMSI. If you're looking at the image there in that middle image, all of those colorful shapes represent development pads, and the darker lines that are surrounding them represent the streets. And so the line furthest to your right, which is closing out kind of that triangle there, is New Water Avenue. That is going to be a public project, but will also have a new third-party sanitary sewer system in it. That will be able to serve the rest of the development as it comes online, as well as new water and electrical utilities. Parking is going to become a really important aspect of this effort as the campus redevelops. Those kind of green shapes there, E and F, are where OMSI currently has its larger surface parking. Those are really key development sites, and so we're going to need to find another solution in parking. We'll be working together with OMSI on a feasibility, looking at certain criteria for a parking solution, not only for OMSI, but sort of more broadly within the Central East Side District. And then below you can see kind of the bevy of city parking partners that will be working on that. In addition, OMSI will be working with their third-party sanitary provider as well as the railroad, which is right abuts that side of the road, and TriMet. And just a note also on the New Water Avenue, something I think that Kimberly had noted, this is also advancing Central City in Motion, which has been Bureau of Transportation's large effort in diversifying some of our multimodal opportunities within the city. And so you'll see a two-way cycle track that will be going on that. And it will be moving some of the slower or the faster cyclists over onto the main road and off of the waterfront to avoid some of that conflict. And then the third kind of area is the vertical development. And this is where over time, over the phasing, which we'll visit in just a moment, is a real opportunity for particularly Prosper Portland and the Portland Housing Bureau to lean in and partner with OMSI, not only to achieve the goal around affordable housing, which is about 25% of all housing units going into OMSI would be affordable. In addition, Prosper sees we see a great opportunity in partnering on the programming and the tenanting of some of that, particularly the commercial space. Kind of harkening back to what Kimberly was saying, there is a lot of flexibility, not only in how big the buildings are, but also what you can do in them. And so it gives them, OMSI, an opportunity to respond to the market, and whether it's going to be an office building, residential, with a ground floor retail, et cetera. And then key partners obviously will be OMSI and Edlin & Co. And then, as we just heard from James, the Northwest Native Chamber on the Center for Tribal Nations. Next slide, please. So walking through the term sheet scope, it really does kind of three key things. So the first, what it does is it's really just focused on the properties that OMSI owns and controls. And so what you're seeing here on the image on the right, anything that has an X on it represents a property that's within the Central City Master Plan within that district, but is not subject to the term sheet. So the PCC Climb Center, there's a couple of private property owners in there, as well as the Portland Opera. While we're aiming for cohesive redevelopment, we're focused on those parcels under OMSI's control. It also starts to define key terms, including project categories. And so I'll walk you through what this kind of table is in just a moment. But then the last part of what the actual term sheet does is it really kind of serves to further and engage on the future development phases, as this is envisioned to be a three-phased effort. And it also starts to set kind of what are the parameters for future public investment. Okay, so looking at this table, we've got the project categories, phases 1, 2, and 3. There's 4 distinct project categories. So the first is around public infrastructure projects. So these are the projects that would be led by and paid for by the city or other public partners. It doesn't anticipate or is relied upon with vertical development. We have our private infrastructure projects, which will be those that are OMSI-led, so something like the sewer, the waterfront education park, et cetera. Private development projects will be those that will be led with OMSI and its development partners, particularly Tract A, which we'll talk about in just a moment. And then the public development projects, which are really the affordable housing projects. So in the first phase, and this is where we're really dedicated and have a lot of detail in the term sheet, as well as the city investment, is we're aiming for development and construction, as Kimberly noted earlier. So coming out of this phase, we anticipate seeing a new Water Avenue, a determination on the mitigation bank on whether or not it moves forward, and if not, that kind of northern reach there that we talked about on the waterfront becomes an obligation for OMSI. That we will have a sewer, which is fantastic. We'll have a new waterfront education park that is built out and programmed in alignment with the values that we've been talking about. Tract A right now is that kind of first yellow shape that you see at the top of the screen on the right there. We're anticipating 80 affordable units going into there as a partnership between Hacienda CDC as well as Edlin & Co., and you'll be hearing from Diana shortly. And then really importantly, a minimum of 250,000 square feet of development. And so that is really the vertical that we're hoping, that we're wanting to see out of this first phase. And then OMSI and Portland Housing Bureau will continue to kind of discuss about what the framework and the structure of their partnership will be to achieve those affordable housing goals. Phase 2, and this is all really moving forward also with kind of the phases of the CCMP. I can't emphasize that enough. Phase 2 is really dedicated to feasibility. And so we're looking at the feasibility of district parking and what are some of the criteria and the opportunities around that that would inform a potential public-private partnership. And then there's the tracks C, E, and F. And so OMSI will be, and its team will be looking at feasibility of redeveloping one or all of those sites. And then the affordable housing partnership between OMSI and PHB will be solidified with an opportunity for the Portland Housing Bureau to redevelop one of the sites that OMSI owns strictly for affordable housing. And then on phase 3, we're back to development and construction. So we're using the feasibility kind of findings from that middle phase there to potentially build out the district parking, assuming that partnership and financing are put in place. OMSI will continue to build out the plazas that are kind of sprinkled throughout the district. Loop Road is that purple line that you see there, and that one is actually, it supports OMSI and the museum's activities, moving in exhibitions, et cetera, as well as supporting the other private properties that are there. Hopefully C, E, and F will move in terms of going under development, and then PHB will realize its affordable housing project if it hasn't already. Next slide, please. A couple of key agreements coming out of this term sheet that we just wanted to highlight for you. We've talked about the phasing being in alignment with the Central City Master Plan. The phasing is intentional, not only guided by some of the infrastructure, but it's also as part of the partnership that we've structured with OMSI in the expectations of some of the performance, particularly around the vertical development that I was talking about. And we've committed to each other that we will not be moving to phase 2 or to phase 3 until those projects are realized in that first phase, unless there's a fantastic opportunity that comes up and the parties have agreed that we should be advancing on something like that. The city funding, you'll see here in a moment where the city funding is allocated right now for that first phase. We've also agreed that with OMSI that for now they will not pursue other public funds but for what is in that first term sheet. Again, unless there's an opportunity and we're coordinated with each other. But it's really just kind of, again, having an alignment and a coordination mechanism amongst the city and Prosper so that we're understanding kind of hopefully what we're investing. And then the Waterfront Education Park, there's timeline in place, particularly for that North Reach I've referred to a couple of times. Affordable housing with the goal of achieving the 240 to 300 units that are between 0 to 80% area median income, and achieving that through a kind of a combination of tools, right? Through inclusionary housing, state funding, as well as the PHB supported units, and some of that will be relying upon a new TIF district as well. And the last note I'll call out is around the general provisions. So for the public investments, our city or Prosper or Portland Housing Bureau policies will apply around green building and workforce development and construction. But OMSI has also elected to voluntarily apply these to their private projects as well as those fit. Next slide, please. So the funding aspect of this, just kind of a quick overview here. On the left in this table are some of the key projects that we've been talking about. In the middle is the total cost, and then we'll walk through the sources. So for New Water Avenue, it's at just past 30% design. We're expecting a new cost estimate soon, but it's about $30 million. As we've talked about, there is still a gap in the project, and so we're going to be working diligently with OMSI to close that gap. As of right now, both the Portland Transportation Bureau is dedicating $500,000 in their own transportation development systems development charges, and then, as Kimberly noted, Prosper Portland is committing $10.9 million of existing TIF from the Central East side. The state has allocated another $11 million, so we'll be working over the next year or so to close that gap. Old Water Avenue and Loop Road are anticipated to be about $6 million, but those are right now on sort of the private side of the ledger, if you will. The district parking, as we've talked about, depending on kind of feasibility, we'll look at is there opportunities for future TIF investment if the new districts are approved, as well as other kind of potential city resources. The Waterfront Education Park, it's more of a placeholder, but about $40 million is what has been sort of initially cost estimated based on some of that very early design work. Parks has offered and is holding a budget reservation of $4 million of their own SDCs to be invested in some of those public aspects like the overlooks and some trail improvements. So overall, there's about $90 million worth of kind of the infrastructure costs, if you will, in this first phase. The City of Portland is dedicating $15.4 million to that first phase with a kind of a holding on phases 2 and 3, depending on both performance and sort of needs in the future. Next slide, please. We're just about done. So just want to kind of spend a moment on the intergovernmental agreement between Prosper and PBOT. So this is just outlining, right, our roles and responsibilities as Prosper Portland being the funder, as well as PBOT being sort of the designated performing agency, and they will be doing the handling the design, the engineering, the construction, and the management of New Water Avenue. We have a termination date of June 30th, 2030 in order for everything on New Water Avenue to be constructed. And just this last slide here gives you a sense of a very high-level project schedule. Oh, next slide, please. Of looking at closing out that kind of funding and financing strategy by just a little bit earlier than next year. Design and engineering has been started with anticipation of that being completed in 2026, and then really taking through New Water Avenue, anticipating completion in mid-2027. So it'll be the first project coming out, which we're super excited about. That's what we have for you. We do have a few folks that are invited testimony, which we're really excited to have. I don't know if you prefer to have them come up first and then do questions, or if you prefer questions.
Why don't we have them come up? How many folks do you have invited?
We have 5.
Okay, very
Yep.
good. Why don't we hear from them first?
Okay.
We'll do the first round of questions if there are any at this point, and then we'll go to open public testimony and then have additional questions if necessary.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just call them up. All right, so Asia Dakota, Caroline, John, and Diana, and then we'll have Aliana come up next.
Great, and while they're organizing, could you just quickly give us some estimate of the phasing of phase 2 and 3, or do you have a sense? Do you have a guesstimate?
Of
phase?
timing?
Yes.
Oh, yes. So I would say phase 1, we're estimating, loose, about 10 years.
Okay.
I think phase 2, that will be a shorter, because the feasibility, you're testing kind of more market feasibility, and so that would be a shorter period of time. And then phase 3 is dependent upon the outcomes of that.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
So it's a long horizon.
I feel like I just died.
Thank you.
You'll be there for
I'm just
some
gonna
of
leave it there.
All right, I'll let you guys go in whatever order you'd like.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners. My name is Asia Dakota. I'm a citizen of the Yakima Nation, and I'm also the executive director for the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, also known as CRITFIC. As you've heard today, CRITFIC has been working alongside OMSI, the City of Portland, and Metro to plan a new waterfront education park in the OMSI district. We're very grateful for all the collaboration and support from the city leading up today, so thank you for being partners with us in this effort. Through work with the Center for Tribal Nations Advisory Committee that James described earlier, this committee of tribal elders, youth, and representatives from Portland and the region set forth a vision for the park as a place of healing to explore and experience the river through a tribal lens of culture and science. The park is envisioned to be a free public green space for all communities. It will be centered in Indigenous culture and offer free learning opportunities related to ecological and cultural knowledge. This includes native plants, invasive species, river health, and culture placemaking opportunities that foster a sense of place for people, such as demonstration of traditional native fishing practices. It will also include viewing platforms, plazas, restored riverfront habitats, hands-on outdoor science programming, and interpretation that affirms, sustains, and shares both traditional ecological and cultural knowledge alongside Western science to help foster a deep connection to the river for all visitors. The OMSI district presents the opportunity to transform current parking lots and brownfields into a neighborhood that adds 4.5 acres of parks and green spaces to the Central East Side. In fulfilling our vision for the park, our goal is to showcase and advance climate solutions through transportation, next-generation urban systems and technology, while also providing engaging learning experiences for the public. This approach to engaging everyone with the river and understanding the connection between human and planetary health is imperative to protect and restore fish habitat and water quality. The $15.4 million investment in the term sheet supports infrastructure development for the Waterfront Education Park and helps to leverage the $7 million investment from Metro. CRIPVIC and OMSI have partnered on numerous projects for decades, and we are proud to once again join in on this transformative project that will have such a positive effect on the city and the region. Your investment will bring this important project and public park to life, so we encourage and look forward to your continued support. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Diana Nunez Cáceres, and I'm serving as Hacienda CDC's Chief Operating Officer. I'm excited to be here. This is an amazing partnership, and it's Hacienda's job to help families access the critical ingredients they need to achieve their goals. A stable, affordable home, a healthy family life that allows youth to learn and grow, opportunities for economic success, and access to healthy neighborhoods. The OMSI district inclusion of 1,200 market rate and affordable housing units with a minimum of 20% being affordable aligns exactly with Hacienda's mission to support low-income families. We ask that Portland City Council to approve the $15.4 million infrastructure investment to ensure this critical housing component moves forward. The council support is essential to building the infrastructure that will make the OMSI district a reality. This investment will create a foundation for a vibrant, inclusive community in the Central East Side and the broader Portland City. The OMSI district's vision of the mixed-use, transit-oriented neighborhood will provide much-needed housing and economic opportunities for diverse communities in Portland. Your support will help bring the vibrant and inclusive vision to life. The OMSI district represents a powerful opportunity to combine economic growth with cultural and social empowerment. Hacienda CDC is committed to supporting and partnering in this vision, and we urge the City Council to invest in the future of Portland through this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Wheeler and City Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is John Isaacs, and I'm the Executive Director of Public Affairs or the Executive Vice President of Public Affairs for the Portland Metro Chamber. I'm a resident of Southeast Portland, and I prefer he, him. The Chamber is Greater Portland's Chamber of Commerce and represents the largest, most diverse network of businesses in the region, with over 80% of our members are being small businesses. On behalf of our members and partners, I'm here today to express the Chamber's strongest possible support for the term sheet between OMSI, City of Portland, and Prosper Portland, and the IGA between Prosper and the Portland Bureau of Transportation. This is another big moment for our city, and once again, another demonstration of this council's recognition that the city must be a genuine partner if we are to achieve our vision of a thriving Portland for future generations. I want to particularly thank Prosper Portland Executive Director Kimberly Branham and her team, OMSI President and CEO Aaron Graham and her team, and PBOT Director Millicent Williams for getting us to this moment. On behalf of the greater Portland business community, I want to express our admiration for the leadership and vision these three exemplary leaders embody in their roles. We work with them, and week after week, month after month, we see them, their vision and their leadership in their extremely challenging roles. The value of the partnership we have developed with each of them and their teams cannot be overstated. As you are well aware, the Chamber views the OMSI District redevelopment as a generationally important project that, along with Broadway Corridor, New Albina, Rose Quarter, and Lloyd District, position Portland Central City to not just thrive, but demonstrate again that Portland is a global leader in urban livability, sustainable urban development, and shared economic opportunity. Most importantly, this project is proof that prioritizing big, bold projects can and must be done with racial equity as a central tenet and core value. These values are not competing, but equally important and mutually reinforcing. Here's why this project is so vital to the future of our city's economy. The OMSI district is projected to generate $1 billion in economic output and create more than 11,000 jobs. Those are wow numbers. The council's approval of the $15.4 million infrastructure investment will unlock this potential. Council's approval today will also invest in the infrastructure necessary to catalyze the OMSI district's growth. This funding lays the groundwork for new development and attract and leverage significant private sector investment. The leveraging of private investment should be a criteria for a public investment of this size. The OMSI district, in addition to the huge investment we need in housing, will also offer mixed-use development, which will create new opportunities for businesses, particularly in innovation and the innovation and sustainability sectors. Your support will help foster a thriving business environment in Portland's Central East Side. And finally, the OMSI district's integration of sustainable transportation infrastructure aligns with our goals for a responsible, growth-oriented business environment. The council's approval of this investment will ensure that Portland continues to lead in sustainable urban development. It's no secret that the chamber has at times been frustrated with what we viewed as a lethargic approach to the OMSI redevelopment in particular, and at times over the past couple of years, we have made a conscious decision to push the public conversation to motivate city bureaus to act with more urgency. We know at times that has forced some uncomfortable conversations, which we have no apologies for. But today, we fully recognize that the city has responded, and under the leadership of Directors Branham and Williams, Prosper and Peabot have answered these calls for swifter action and stronger partnership. So it's important to us that I end today by giving full recognition of every member of their teams, Mayor Wheeler and his staff, in particular, Andrew Fitzpatrick, Commissioner Rubio and Commissioner Mapps, who until recently led Prosper and Peabot and did much of the work to get us here, and every individual that worked so hard to get the critical agreements before you today. Thank you very much for your work. The city greatly appreciates it and needs it. So for those reasons, we urge your approval and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thanks, John.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. I am Caroline Holcomb, the Executive Director of Central East Side Industrial Council, also known as CEIC. The CEIC is a 40-year-old business association focused solely on the district's economic success, vitality, and livability. We represent the second largest business district in the Portland metro region, representing 1,300 businesses across 681 acres. I am here today to express the CEIC support for the OMSI district. This district is a transformative project that will drive economic growth in the Central East Side, creating more than 11,000 jobs, as you've heard, a wow number, and revitalize underused areas. I encourage the Portland City Council to support the term sheet and the $15.4 million infrastructure investment needed to make this vision a reality. The Council's approval of this critical infrastructure funding is essential to aligning Water Avenue and creating a safer, more connected neighborhood and business district. The investment will catalyze the district's development and enhance the Central East Side's vitality, livability, and success. With a goal of net zero carbon emissions and waste, the OMSI district will showcase and advance climate solutions through habitat restoration, sustainable transportation, and next-generation urban systems and technology. It will transform parking lots and brownfields, as you've heard, into neighborhoods that add 4.5 acres of parks and green spaces, and it is projected to reduce CO2 emissions by 1.5 metric tons. These things, and the OMSI district's focus on sustainable and mixed-use development, align with the CEIC's vision for a more vibrant community for all. Thank you for hearing our testimonies today in support of this project. With you, we can create a neighborhood that benefits the local community and our broader central city.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Aliana and I am an OMSI kid. When I think of OMSI, I think of a place that is fun, engaging, and hands-on. This will be my 8th year of taking science classes at OMSI with the partnership of the Oregon Homeschool Science Club. There are so many different interesting experiments and assemblies where it is obvious that the kids are all staring excited. One of my earliest memories was of making spacesuits in the physics lab capable of keeping our marshmallow astronauts alive when subjected to the vacuum of space. The chemistry lab is my favorite. with explosions and fun activities like the jelly bean experiment. Last year in our level 4 tag class, we explored engineering from roller coasters to medical equipment. I have had the opportunity to build relationships with OMSI staff, peers, and my ASL interpreter team. I feel like OMSI has always been supportive, accommodating, and safe.
Good job. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jessica Lockhart. I am Aliana's mom. I too was an OMSI kid. I have formidable memories of the science halls and summer camps growing up. 14 years ago, I returned to the Portland area after graduating from U of O, underemployed, but very ambitious. I started volunteering at OMSI as a resume builder, and it turned into so much more. I found a vibrant community and unexpected opportunities, including the discovery of programs for homeschooling and a lot of school-based education. It was a significant impact on my own career development, and what I didn't know at the time was it became a strong influence and a cornerstone in my family's own path. OMSI has supported an incredible science education for my twice exceptional neurodiverse children, for my daughter, Aliana, who over the last 8 years has experienced progressive deaf gain. OMSI has also been a sanctuary. The staff have been unfailingly supportive and accommodating, helping her build the confidence she builds today. And for my 7-year-old, he has literally grown up in the halls of the museum, which in turn has nurtured his natural gifts in math, science, and a boundless amount of enthusiasm. I continue to volunteer to give back at the numerous community events, including Pride at the Museum and the Oregon Science Festival. The OMSI district will extend the legacy, offering hands-on learning and innovation with important culturally connected educational experiences. Your approval of this $15.4 million infrastructure investment is crucial to realizing this vision. By supporting this project, you're investing in a community space that is walkable, bike-friendly, and dedicated not only to an educational opportunity, but a healthy, supportive, inclusive environment. Thank you for your consideration and support in creating a lasting legacy for Portland area families just like mine and future generations to come.
Thank you. We appreciate you both. Thank you. All right, I think that completes invited testimony. How many folks do we have signed up for general testimony, Keelan?
No one signed up.
Nobody signed up. All right, very good. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Colleagues, any questions? I just have a thought. It's amazing to me how much OMSI has changed over the years. When I was an OMSI kid too. And back then, the two most exciting parts of OMSI were the pendulum, which went back and forth an indefinite number of times, and the big plastic heart. I think those were the. Just one more. What was the diving bell maybe?
The laser light shows.
Oh, the lasers.
Yeah. I mean, come on, late 70s, what else did you do?
Yeah, I was a little older, Dan. I was a little older.
I'm outing myself a bit, days are
A
confused.
little older crew there.
All right, and with that happy thought, this is, Commissioner Ryan has a question, possibly for staff.
Yeah, it's about the 11,000 jobs. It's a very exciting number. Who wants to talk about 11,000 jobs that was mentioned several times? This council wants to help us get to that number. So I just need to hear a little bit more about how we came up with that number and what has to happen so it's actualized.
Yes, let's do it.
If we don't get private sector down there offering some living wage jobs, it's not going to be that family housing and everything that we need to attract. So,
That's true.
yeah.
And I would also encourage, is Jill Sherman here? Yes, do you want to come join me? Thank you. Jill.
I haven't had a recent briefing, so that's why I'm
Yes,
asking a
no,
question.
great
Yeah.
question. So we worked with Eco Northwest on the projections for the number of jobs during construction and after construction based on the square footage build out and the mix of uses that we were contemplating in the district, including the 1,200 units of housing. We are certainly open to having more housing. We would need to go through a process to reopen the CCMP and revisit that, but that is something that we have been talking about already with Portland Housing Bureau and Helmy's leadership to think about whether we could do more housing and whether we could make more of it affordable. I also think a key differentiator in the district is the fact that OMSI is already the anchor tenant. You know, we attract 1.2 million people a year to Water Avenue. And with the development of a waterfront education park that is a public amenity for every business and entity locating there with us, as well as the development of the Center for Tribal Nations, which we believe will be a regional, national, if not global draw. As James said, there will be a critical mass of people coming, living in the district. And with that, we have already been getting a lot of interest from employers and including government employers about co-locating with us in the OMSI district. What else would you add?
And then maybe you could break it down to if it's part of phase one. Phase 2 and phase 3 scared me a bit because there were so many decades that were added on. Yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. For the record, Jill Sherman with Edlin & Co. Just specifically to your question of like, where does the number come from? It's based both on the full build out, so the all of the construction jobs that would be created, those hours get translated into FTEs, as well as permanent jobs that would be created, which are somewhat associated with residential. Obviously, there's property management and other types of jobs associated with residential, but the majority of the permanent jobs would be created and housed by potential future commercial space. The original CCMP, as it stands today, assumes about 1 million square feet of office. You know, we're obviously not about to, in the current environment, build a giant speculative office building, but that is going to change over time, and this is a long-term plan. And so it's those buildings that would create those jobs, and I think we do have a unique opportunity to go out and market the district and this focus on science and technology and co-location with OMSI, as well as the focus on innovative sustainability technologies and the ability to sort of showcase that as a way to hopefully attract some anchor tenants to join us in the district.
That was helpful. Jill, right?
Yeah.
So was that, first of all, the construction numbers made sense, so that was helpful. I didn't have that in my brain when you said the number. Is this all the way going to phase 3, or is this just a phase 1?
It's at full build out.
This is all the way to phase 3?
Exactly. So this is once when you've built out all of the square footage that can be built out in the district, which again, today is 1,200 units of housing, about 1 million square feet of commercial space, and then there's also active ground floor uses as well in a lot of those buildings. It could change over time if it turns out there's more demand for housing, and that makes more sense, but that would require going back and updating and revising the CCMP.
Okay, so it is a full all the way to phase 3?
Correct.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, thank you to the resolution. Please call the roll.
Gonzalez.
The OMSI district is truly a cornerstone project in defining the city's landscape for the next century. Like so many Portlanders, Portland families, my family has deep ties to OMSI's history. All 3 of my children grew up in OMSI camps or visiting on Saturdays, usually the rainy ones, when there wasn't much to do, but yet we found a place that was stimulating, engaging, and fun for all 3 of my kids. While the project is rich and multifaceted, I find particularly touching that an organization so focused on a place for children to learn, to play, will kick off the next generation of projects in the city of Portland. But I also want to emphasize one piece here as a real estate lawyer. Term sheets are just a start. Lining up financing, developing finalized agreements, and most importantly, getting family wage jobs, putting shovels in the ground is the real work. But today is an important step in envisioning the future of Portland in a post-pandemic world. I wholeheartedly vote aye.
Maps.
I want to congratulate and thank everyone, especially city staff who worked to get us to this moment. I will tell you, I have been watching this project from a transportation perspective for as long as I've been on council. All the reviews I have heard in the last several weeks and months suggest that Prosper in particular has done an amazing job pulling all our partners together. So thank you so much. And I want Portlanders who are just tuning into this particular project to know that some really exciting things are happening in this space. You can think of probably a lot of us either grew up playing in OMSI, and certainly I think a lot of us have taken our kids to OMSI. I still have kids who are kind of OMSI age appropriate, but there really is a new vision for this space, and it's an incredibly exciting one. I tell you, I can walk from my house down to OMSI, and I do it with my kids all the time, also on my run-in route. Very excited to see the environmental work that we're going to do in this space, the cultural work that we're going to do in this space. Bringing new housing to this space is going to be profoundly transformative. The kind of, and it's worth noting that this will take a while to move forward, but some of the work that's going to happen in this space you will see right away. I think in my opening comments I talked about this being the foundation for one of Portland's next new neighborhoods, and I believe that is absolutely true. Thanks to everyone who made this possible. I vote aye.
Rubio.
For the record, I'll just say I too was an OMSI kid, and I have to agree with you, Mayor, that the walk through Hart was amazing. It was everything as a kid. I just want to say thank you, Aaron, James, Amy, Director Branham, DCA Oliveira, and the guest presenters for your important words, your inspiring words too, and to each of you and the numerous staff and community and tribal partners for all your work on this incredible project. I'm thrilled with the vision for the new mixed-use and mixed-income neighborhood on the river in Central City with access to transit and the Center for Tribal Nations, which is going to be just amazing. I'm really thrilled with the partnerships also that got us here. And this partnership and these projects have incredible momentum. Everyone is talking about this project, and it's one of the best opportunities that we have to bring new energy and investment into our Central City. So it's worth rooting for, and it's worth fighting for. And I know we're not done yet. We still need to track down more funding for the streets and to create a new TIF district to get even more of that affordability in there. But it's something I know that we can do, and it's an exciting moment. And I want to just thank each of you, everyone that's involved, for your contributions. Looking forward to this project. I vote aye.
Ryan.
Yes. The OMSI district, bravo for establishing a name. What a brilliant brand moment for the cherished institution that we've all been talking about. If you grew up in Portland like I did, it's true. OMSI was just a place you wanted to go hang out. And I remember saying to my mom once, because I was like probably many kids that didn't find my science classes that interesting at school. But when I went to OMSI, it was like, okay, why can't all science classes and teachers be like what you experience at OMSI? So the role that you play for science literacy is very, very important for the education ecosystem of our city and the whole state. So thank you. On that note, I think there's a lot of OMSI employees here today. Could you all stand up and be seen? Because that's why all of our families like to go there. It's because of you. Look at you. Yay. Thank you so much for showing up. Aaron Graham, you've been such a patient, persistent leader. I remember one of my first moments on a site visit, it was with you, Commissioner Maps. Everyone was still holed up in COVID, but we got to go on a walk along the waterfront. You organized that, and you explained the vision so well. And you also talked about the importance of your relationship with the Native American community, and you spent a lot of time on that. And it was really clear that it wasn't just, I'll just say, it didn't feel like a check the box equity moment. It was very authentic. And then so to hear the testimony from Aaron Graham this afternoon, not from Aaron Graham, James Parker, sorry, I looked at my notes quickly. It was great to have you here, and you could see that this is an authentic relationships with the Northwest Native Chamber. And so I wanted to acknowledge that, because we don't always experience such deep engagement like that. I also want to just make a comment about how important the family housing is in general in Portland, but to have it in an area that's called the OMSI district. We have an infrastructure challenge right now with our schools. The enrollment's going down pretty dramatically in our elementary schools, which isn't a good sign for all the new high schools we've built. So Portland must attract families that want to move here and stay here. It's always been a bedrock on why Portland's a successful city in the country. We've always been a top 25 city, and it's not because of our corporate purse. It's because of things like having a great school system, having amenities for families, having great parks. And so this is a part of the Portland that we want to continue to be, and we have to keep providing infrastructure so that our school enrollments don't keep declining. So I wanted to also just mention that it has other aspects of the economic long-term plan that might not be seen. So I wanted to call that out. My thing is, I'm really excited about this. I do look forward to being a champion if I'm on this council going forward. I will do everything I can to help create some more enthusiasm on how to attract those more anchor tenants in the private sector. So I'm looking forward to be a part of this journey. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
I am very enthusiastically supportive. Thank you, everybody who's brought this. Are we still on the air? Okay, well, I'm just gonna keep going. You guys are here, you made the effort, so I just wanna say that I think this is the beginning of what will be a fantastic journey. This is an important, you heard it will take many, many years to fulfill it. My colleagues really said it best. This is about the future. This is about engaging our families, about engaging our community. There's a lot of tough work that needs to be done, but I think you'll find that this city council and the next and the one after that, and it sounds like 2 or 3 after that, will continue to be supportive of this vision. And I hope that this vision is not only catalytic within the OMSI area, but I actually hope it will help to propel further investments and development in the Lloyd District, that it will help make the case stronger for the Broadway corridor, that it will also generate some enthusiasm across the river in the Zidell Yards area, and continue to put Portland on the map as a place that people want to work, to play, to visit. Again, I really appreciate the focus that you all brought to this project. I vote aye, and the resolution is adopted. To the emergency ordinance, please call the roll.
Gonzalez.
Commissioner Maps has a
Just
point.
a point of order, did we manage to stay on, are we still broadcasting?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Rand.
Yeah, we lost all of our technology up here, but that doesn't matter.
I'm still having some system
Get us
issues,
off
but
script.
I think we're good. I think
Okay.
we can continue.
Call the
Gonzalez.
roll. Aye.
Maps.
So just for folks following at home, this is the IGA intergovernmental agreement between PBOT and Prosper Portland that'll help us build some roads in this space. And as your former infrastructure commissioner, there's something I want to share with the people of Portland. We all care about development, we all care about new housing, but I'll tell you, all of our development that happens in this town is built on the bedrock of infrastructure. Roads, water, and sewer. And I'll tell you, I think I want to really take a moment to stand up and thank our teams over at PBOT who have made this happen. I will tell you, I don't know if there is a bureau in this city that works harder and frankly sometimes gets less respect than our team at PBOT. But I will tell you, I've seen them get up and be out there in the middle of snowstorms trying to make sure that people can get home. I know people care deeply about their infrastructure, whether it's being able to not be stuck in congestion or be able to get to where you want to go on your bicycle. I have been incredibly impressed and moved at their ability to creatively and constructively respond to the expectations of Portlanders, including their expectations of Portlanders that we rebuild and reimagine this space. Madam Director, I want to thank you for everything you've done to get us to this moment, and I want to thank all the other folks who helped us get to this moment too, which is why I vote aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Ryan.
Here's the infrastructure. Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The emergency ordinance is adopted. Keelan, do we need to stop for a while we figure out what's going on? None of us have any technology up here. We have no screens, we have nothing.
Are we done?
I wonder if it's
We have one more item. Yeah, so maybe we'll, there, popped up. There.
Okay, something.
We'll take a recess.
We're back now.
Photo. Folks, I'm really sorry, but we still have business that we have to conduct. So if I could just ask you, keep the party going, but move the party. Thank you very much. All right, item 776, this is an emergency ordinance.
Add Community Police Oversight Board pursuant to Portland City Charter, Chapter 2, Article 10.
Colleagues, after years of effort by many, many people, including community, city staff, legal staff, and others, we've reached yet another significant milestone in our settlement agreement with the United States Department of Justice. Despite a deeply frustrating fairness hearing last week, as elected officials, we must continue to move forward and establish a new police discipline system consistent with our responsibilities under the new city charter. To that end, Heidi Brown from the City Attorney's Office and Stephanie Howard from my office are here to review the code package for our final consideration. Heidi and Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Council. As the Mayor mentioned, this has been a very long journey, and we're not at the end. We're at kind of another inflection point and a new beginning in what will continue to be a journey. And as all of you know, representatives from your staff worked really hard on developing the code package that you're going to hear about today. And it will largely be familiar to the one that you saw and approved of back in November. Next slide, please. With that work, the overarching goals that we followed in trying to put forward the code package that you will vote on today was, again, a top priority to fulfill the mandate of the voter-approved changes to the city's charter, and also to create a system where discipline can be upheld in the event that it is challenged going forward. And that balance was at times a tenuous challenge to meet, but I do believe that what you will hear about today does meet both of those goals. Next slide. So just to give you a quick overview of our presentation, we'll start with just a quick reminder on what the charter mission statement was, as well as a timeline of some of the key dates that have passed up to this point. We'll overview the changes that have been incorporated based on community input, as well as the changes that were incorporated based on our bargaining with labor partners and with the Department of Justice. We will wrap things up with a discussion about the court ruling and the next steps. And then we wanted to provide ample space for council questions and, of course, the public comment. Next slide.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Heidi Brown, and I'm with the City Attorney's Office, and it's great to be here with all of you today. I wanted to start by reminding you where the charter directed us by commenting on the mission statement. And if you'll recall, the mission statement for the charter amendments related to the oversight system were to independently investigate promptly, fairly, and impartially, and to impose discipline as appropriate, as well as to make recommendations on police directives and policies. This is a mission that guided our work in developing the code language, that guided the work of the Police Accountability Commission, and that guides us still today. Next slide, please. As Stephanie mentioned, our goal in this was really fulfilling the voters' mandate, which was the mission that we just talked about. And what we attempted to do, and I think we did successfully, is to implement the mission through this code language that's before you today, which then leads to community-led investigations, something brand new for us, because even independent police review, although they are not sworn officers, they are city employees. So this will be a community board that will oversee the office that does the investigations. And then the community board itself will make disciplinary decisions as to what's appropriate. Next slide, please.
So just quickly reviewing some of the significant dates in this process. In September of last year, this council accepted the Police Accountability Commission report. And you'll recall in that report, there were recommendations for code language, as well as some recommendations for structural pieces around the system. From that date until November 15th, council representatives along with city attorneys, we worked to base the code package on those recommendations, working to maintain as much as we could while also addressing, again, making sure the mission was consistent with the charter, making sure that the code language was consistent with legal standards, and trying to synthesize all of that work into a code package, recognizing that in the future, this board can promulgate administrative laws and rules for itself on some of the more nuanced details that came with the police accountability report. On November 15th, council approved the city, or I guess through a resolution, directed the city attorney to move forward with that modified code package to work with our labor partners and to negotiate with the Department of Justice, followed by a fairness hearing. And in that process, we also maintained opportunities to engage with the community, to receive additional feedback, and to try to, identify areas where we might be able to strengthen the code based on all of that feedback. So in December, on the 4th, we had a town hall where we engaged with a broad community, received lots of great feedback. And then from there, from December to this June, the negotiations were occurring with labor partners and the Department of Justice. June 27th was the date that we announced the final code package that would be moving forward to the fairness hearing. And so that was made publicly. We again had a July 15th town hall, engaged with community, heard concerns and discussed many of those concerns. And then on July 31st, the code package was posted along with our motion, our joint motion with the Department of Justice to accept the amendments to the settlement agreement that would incorporate this code package you'll hear today. Last week, August 29th, was the fairness hearing. And I think, as you all are aware, the judge, and we'll talk more in detail about this, but the judge did grant ultimately the amendments to the settlement agreement and the code. However, he made a decision to delay certain implementation of that. Again, we'll talk more about what that means for the council's next steps in just a moment. So, next slide, please. So beginning with some of the changes that were made since this code package last came to you in November. As I said, we got great suggestions from community in our engagement over these last several months and incorporated several of those, including the recommendation that we would ensure anyone who filed a complaint would receive or be assigned or connected with a complaint navigator that can help to help guide them through the process, explain the important, steps in these processes, and help make that experience a little bit more accessible to them. And so that was a great start. And we, in fact, based on a suggestion from the mayor, included that to occur whenever an officer-involved shooting happens, so that any, family or related members of that individual would receive that same support from a complaint navigator. We also moved this new board out from under the public safety service area and under the city operations area, which is where our human relations group is, those sort of independent city bureaus that are responsible for navigating, employee conduct and things like that. So that was a natural place for that to land, and that was a request made by community. We also received feedback from the community that they were not happy about having added representation from the Portland Police Association, the Command Officers Association, and one representative from the chief's office to the nominating committee that would review applicants and make recommendations for council appointments for members of the board. To try to balance that, we increased the number of community members represented to 2 from the Citizen Review Committee, as well as added a representative from the Office of Equity and Human Rights, so that would those voices would also be embedded in that nominating process. In addition, we expanded, We expanded the oversight system to allow them to provide feedback on all internal affairs investigations. And so what that means is, while there are certain cases that would remain with internal affairs, the oversight board would have the opportunity to review those investigations once complete and make a recommendation to the chief if they feel there was something that had not been investigated or an outcome that they felt was inconsistent. That is the same authority that we provided to the chief to provide feedback to all of the new board's investigations as well. Thank you. Thanks. And finally, we heard concerns from community with regard to having required ride-alongs for board members as part of their training for this board. And so what we also heard was the suggestion that if we're going to include that, maybe include a more community-focused training as well. And so we did add that to the training so that new board members will not only receive training in the police, the police area, including ride-alongs, but they would also have the requirement to engage in some sort of community-based training that provides a lens from a community who's been policed. And I think there are several different kinds of ways to do that, including things like the Red Door Project and other things like that can be incorporated. Next slide, please.
In addition to the changes, the updates that were made based on community input, we also made some changes based on union input and the U.S. Department of Justice input. So we made a minor expansion to the annual audit review to add some additional transparency. It existed in another section, and we just added it into this section as well. We also noted that if the oversight system has jurisdiction over one allegation and there's more than one allegation in the complaint, the oversight system will investigate the entire allegation. So whatever is in the complaint, if there's 5 allegations, they'll investigate the entire complaint. We also allowed for the deputy city administrator, who in this case is the deputy city administrator for city operations, to make exceptions for board members to vote on administrative investigations even when training is not completed yet. So currently, the main requirement was they need to complete training prior to hearing any administrative investigations. And if the deputy city administrator feels that there's a good reason why they haven't done maybe a couple things out of the training that are required, then they can make an exception for maybe a few months or however long. Lastly, we added training on use of video footage, similar to what we are requiring in our body-worn camera policy that you all approved a while ago. There was a requirement that the investigators go through training about body-worn camera footage and sort of its strengths and weaknesses, if you will, and really understand how it works so that they could use this tool as effectively as possible. So we made that change as well to include it. Next slide, please. I also just wanted to remind you that along the way in May, I came before you with Stephanie and we amended Title III to add the oversight system to code. This was done to create a budget authority, a place to put positions, et cetera, for the oversight system in anticipation of standing it up soon. I'll let Stephanie address that a little bit more.
Yeah, so in order to create, do all of the back of the house things that need to happen in our accounting systems and other systems, and to create positions so that the new board would have some positions they could hire directly into and move quickly rather than having to do all of that behind the curtain stuff. We set all of that up in this budget cycle, including the budget, and we also accounted for 7 staff positions just to get the new board started, including 1 director and 6 coordinator positions, which we chose because they're quite flexible and the board can choose to use those staff in a way that's most supportive to them. And I will say that as we have been moving forward, we have put out a job posting for a limited term, one of those coordinator positions, to help with the onboarding that we thought we would be doing now, as well as getting the nominating committee supported, getting applications out. And so that job position was posted yesterday. I think we still intend to hire that, and we can talk more about that in the next slide.
So next up, based on the court rulings, so last week we went to court. We were there from 9 to 3. There was a lot of testimony, a lot of information shared with the court about the amendments to the settlement agreement. So to be clear, what was before the court was a question that was required amendments to the settlement agreement to allow for the oversight system, because the current language focused on independent police review and other systems in existence, and now we are moving to the oversight system, but that wasn't accounted for in the settlement agreement as of yet. And we had agreed back a few years ago when we made some amendments to the settlement agreement that we would make these amendments that we made last week, and also that we would come to you within 21 days of that hearing to adopt code amendments at the same time that then implement those changes to the settlement agreement and start standing up the new oversight system. The judge, as you're aware, heard a great deal of testimony. There were concerns raised on a couple of topics that the judge made some suggestions for how to address those, including there was concerns about bias, that using that term bias, that the members of the board would not be, that they would not have an objective demonstration of bias for or against police. And we talked with the court about how bias is a lack of bias, rather, is a requirement for jurors in cases. It's a requirement for judges to apply. And there's all sorts of decision makers that we expect to not bring their biases to their decision making such that they don't make fair and impartial decisions anymore. So we talked about that, and the judge felt that was a reasonable thing to include in the amendments to the settlement agreement. We also talked about the ride-along requirement. There were some concerns about that. The judge offered to go with any members of potential members on the board who felt uncomfortable riding in a police car, that they could reach out to the judge and he would go with them as long as there weren't too many of those requests. So those were two of the solutions he provided for those issues. But the last issue that came up was around the nominating committee. So as Stephanie explained, the nominating committee is a group of community appointed members so there were going to be 5, one for each of you to appoint on this initial panel, and then going forward, each district council member would appoint, each district would appoint 1 community member to this nominating committee. Then we'd have 2 members on the initial committee from the Citizen Review Committee. Going forward, it'll be 2 members from the board. And we have 1 member from the Office of Equity of Human Rights. And then we had, as Stephanie said, 1 for the police chief to appoint, 1 for Police Association to appoint, and 1 for the Command Officers Association to appoint. In response to concerns raised about that, the judge decided that we could move forward with the code amendments today, because he was aware that we had intended to bring this to you today for adoption, but did say that we were not to take further steps and that the amendments don't go into effect until January 2nd, thus halting our efforts in trying to appoint the board and get them started as soon as possible so they could get their systems set up and a director hired and all the things that need to happen. Part of the reason why this needs to happen is that we have 1 year from the date you adopt the code to then implement the code language, that is hire the board members, appoint the board members rather. The board members then have to hire a director of the office. The director then has to hire investigators and administrative staff, et cetera, who will actually run the office and do the rest of the work along with the director. And all that work needs to happen, and they need to start taking complaints within 1 year of the adoption of the code language. So that does make it a little more challenging for us, but that was the ruling of the court. We did talk about the concerns, at least I did on behalf of the city, that this would pose to us in implementing all of this in a reasonable manner. But the judge felt that that was the appropriate way to go forward, and that was the ruling that he made. So that's what we're facing now, is that we need to adopt this code language, which we are required to do within 21 days of the court hearing, and then to move forward to implement as much as we can, as quickly as we can. And along those lines, I'll let Stephanie comment some of the work we're already in process with.
Yeah, and before I do that, I do just want to explain one other aspect of this that's really important. Right now, the discipline system relies on the Police Review Board, which is a voluntary group that sits in and hears and votes on disciplinary cases. and the Citizen Review Committee, which also reviews cases and addresses certain types of cases after there's been an appeal. Those two bodies are completely made up of volunteers. In addition, our current discipline system relies on the Independent Police Review, which does investigations and again participates in making voting and making discipline recommendations to the chief. Under the settlement agreement, those bodies that are currently in place are to continue to take cases until the new board is stood up within that year and can begin. And then this body, this existing body, would then stop taking cases and finish the cases they have. However, those cases, depending on the types of cases they are, can take months, if not years. And so what really happened here is two things. We've lost 4 months of this new system's timeline to stand up and begin taking cases. 4 months that we cannot do anything to get the board seated. What we can do is what we're planning to do here, which is hire that coordinator that I mentioned that can at least help with getting a recruitment out so that there are applications for a nominating committee to begin reviewing once the new council appoints them, whenever that may be. And to work on that recruitment. That is the realm that we have under the current ruling, is to adopt this code, to hire that position, and to try to start the recruitment. In the meantime, the volunteers on these boards with CRC, PRB, and the employees at IPR are kind of continuing on in limbo, which is a really, really challenging place for all of them, and we are very, very grateful to them for their continued service in any of those roles, and recognize just how challenging that is for them based on this ruling. I think that about covers where we are at this point.
Great, Commissioner Maps.
Thank you for, number one, thank you for all your work on this, and frankly, staff from every office has been deeply engaged in this conversation for as long as I have been on council. And it's great to see us get to this point. And frankly, since we've been doing this for at least 4 years, I should have a better grasp on the question I'm about to ask. I'm going to circle, to everyone's dread, I'm going to circle back to the nominating committee rulings from the judge. I don't want to relitigate that, but one of the things I have been confused about through this entire process is, what's the judge's role here when the advice that I typically think of judges as interpreting law, but especially on the nominating committee thing, it looks like a policy developments intervention and maybe some political advice, and maybe it's a good policy and maybe it's good political advice, but it's not something which I traditionally think of as coming from the legal system. Is there a legal basis to the rulings that are happening here? Are we in a different realm?
Well, Commissioner, I will note, at the start of the hearing, the judge commented on that what was before him last week was the question of the fairness, reasonableness, and adequacy of the amendments to the settlement agreement,
right,
not the code language. So while there was language in the amendments to the settlement agreement about bias, which we talked about,
right,
and about ride-alongs, which I talked about with you and we talked about with the court, there was no mention in the settlement agreement amendments regarding the nominating committee. Basically, what the judge said was that if any party, because the Department of Justice, along with the city, asked the judge not to make that ruling, we didn't feel that was the correct ruling to make. The judge said that if either party was unhappy with the decision, that we could appeal that. The unfortunate thing is that I think, an appeal, especially to the Ninth Circuit, often takes years to get an outcome. Certainly won't happen in 4 months. It's an odd stance to take, and it's an unfortunate position to put us in, because there's not a lot of avenue for review except potentially a motion to reconsider, but there's not really a timely avenue to address this if, to the extent if council were to feel that that maybe the judge stepped into a realm that wasn't his realm to be in. There's not really a process to take that back in a timely manner that will achieve something, so.
Thank you. And I understand in the real world you have practical constraints. You know, you're trying to hit your timelines and whatnot, especially on something important like this. But just so I broadly understand how to navigate spaces like this, in general, I should assume that we're deciding this on the basis of law. In the end, if we were to appeal, this question would be decided by state or federal law as opposed to just kind of political instincts. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, Commissioner, if we were to appeal, then what the appellate court would look at was whether the judge was acting within the legal realm that he was allowed to act within. I think the question would be whether the issue by the time it got to the Court of Appeals is moot because it will already be past January of 2025, so.
Okay, well, checkmate. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I can't raise my
Commissioner
hand.
Gonzalez, then Commissioner Ryan.
Oh,
You're trying to raise your hand.
I was trying to raise, I'm still having system issues, just FYI, but building on Commissioner Mapps's question, maybe just to crystallize one component of, what is the purported authority of Judge Simon to instruct delay in appointment?
Well, I think what Judge Simon, what he did was not decide what the nominating committee will or won't do, but kept his ruling to the implementation date of it. So he has decided to post-date it to January 2nd of 2025. As you know, there are times where judges can make a decision to have, to delay or stay execution of an order or something of that nature. I think the unfortunate part in this situation was that the discussion made it clear that there was concern about who would appoint the nominating committee, and that was the basis for the delay. He also talked about maybe taking it under advisement for 60 days, which, as you know, is his right to do, and then issuing a decision that would not go into effect for another 30 days. So he had a couple different ways he could get there.
But just so I'm crystal clear, though, I'm trying to narrow the question. So
Sorry.
what if he were to say, you know, his authority to essentially order, I mean, and indirectly he's ordering this body to not appoint. What basis, what is the basis for that authority?
Well, the basis that the judge would have would be whether the city was in breach of the settlement agreement. Were we to, after adopting the code language today, move forward right away in appointing the nominating committee rather than waiting till January 2nd? And so the issue would be, I think that would be the legal question.
So he would point to the settlement agreement as the basis. Because I'm just trying to think through the charter language and what our mandate is under the charter language.
I think, if I may, I think what he's trying to say, or what he tried to say from what I heard, was that he believes delaying that is fair, reasonable, and adequate in response to the amendments to the settlement agreement.
And that language that you're citing comes from the settlement agreement? Or what's the
Well,
basis for that as being I just want to understand what the claim of legal authority is
The
here.
fair, reasonable, and adequate is the standard that courts apply when assessing a consent decree or a settlement agreement of this sort
Okay, so
between the
it's like-
United States and a jurisdiction over all sorts of different issues, but in our case, allegations of excessive force.
And the timing, what does the charter language approved by voters say as to the timing of the appointment of, you know, or is it silent on it?
It's silent.
Okay, so we're in a space where there's not a clear mandate from the voters. So the judge intercedes as, not a clear mandate from voters as to timing. Let me be crystal clear what I'm saying. You know, I'm not particularly troubled by who appoints these folks. I don't find it particularly the most significant issue. I know others do, including some of the folks testified last week. What I'm much more concerned about is a federal judge repeatedly overstepping any reasonable constraints. And there's been a pattern here for years. And, you know, he played a game here. He knew we couldn't appeal, that it would be moot. I mean, that's a much more problematic dynamic here, and that a small subset of the community gets to hold up appointment. We're just trying to execute the will of voters here. So that's the bigger issue. You know, who appoints? Next council wants to do it, knock themselves out. I mean, I don't. I do wonder if we should be appealing just on principle, because this has been a pattern. It's set a terrible precedence, but I'll leave it at that.
Commissioner Ryan.
Yeah, thanks. Hi. I was raised by a social worker, and she taught me to, the way to develop compassion is to put yourself in other people's shoes. So I think in many of our meetings, we've had a few, Heidi, I mentioned that I thought doing ride-alongs was just an important part of the training. I want to understand, back to putting yourself in other people's shoes and having compassion, what the equivalent balanced offering was that I thought I heard about, but I couldn't wrap my head around it when I just heard that from all of you a few minutes ago.
What the judge had suggested, what the equivalent balance was.
So what I heard is
yes.
that if you're gonna have people do ride-alongs so they have more insight into their roles, there was something they wanted to provide that was balanced, that would give equal insight, is what I'm assuming is what's going on.
Yeah, it's education.
Is that it?
It was a recommendation from a community member that we include in their training for board members, education on the perspective of community members who have had negative policing interactions, so that they would hear from both sides. So that was kind of the balance that somebody had suggested if we weren't.
Both sides.
That
I think that's a
that
key
was the
word though here,
suggestion.
so we continue to frame this as both sides. Okay.
Yep,
That's fair. I just wanted to make sure I understood what was going on here. Thanks.
thank you.
Can you think of any other example of an oversight committee in any field or any industry where members of an adjudicating body don't have to ever be in the same room with the people whose work they are overseeing? Like, do doctor oversight boards not have to spend any time in a doctor's office or a hospital or meeting with doctors? People who uphold engineering civil standards, do they not meet with engineers or set foot in an engineering firm? I'm just trying to figure any comparator here, and I can't think of a single one.
I'd agree with you, Mayor, and I would note that of all the boards I can think of, like the nursing board,
another good
the
example.
medical board, all those boards, not only do they hear from and get familiarized, but they are made up of predominantly the groups that they are overseeing. So like Teachers Standards Commission, you know, there's a lot of teachers involved in doing that work. So you generally have people who are engaged, who have previously done the work, so they understand what the work is.
Well, it just seems to me, if you are so traumatized, I'm not belittling people's trauma, but if you are so traumatized by police activities that you cannot even be in the same vehicle with a police officer, how can you reasonably stand in judgment in an unbiased manner of those individuals who you can't even be in the same automobile with, or walk down the street with, or visit in their place of employment? To me, just logically, I'm not getting it. Can you explain it to me?
I cannot, Mayor. I would note that one of the things that we did remind the court about is the fact that as part of a discipline process, if a decision is made to discipline an officer, there is a requirement for a due process meeting. This is standard due process required under many different standards, including constitutional standards. And in that instance, the board members will have to meet with the involved officer to hear from them as well as their union representatives. So it's not as if, even if they didn't have the ride-along, they're still going to be interacting with police officers and engaging with them.
Well, they'll be reviewing potentially video. We now
Absolutely.
have body-worn cameras. They will be hearing from those officers. So the nature of this work requires people to be in that environment. It seems to me that even the request that people shouldn't have to be in that environment strikes me as this individual is not really a good candidate for this particular volunteer effort. And maybe I literally don't understand the logic of this, and I'm struggling to get it. I want to see the other side, but I just don't get it.
I will have to let community members share their perspectives with you
Right,
on that,
and
Mayor.
and
I
I'm
think
happy to hear that, but I want to be clear, I'm not just asking if they are traumatized. I believe there are some people who are legitimately traumatized, but the job that they would be applying for here is to provide a fair, unbiased, objective opinion about the activities generally of those individuals that they are so traumatized by that they're unwilling to even do a ride-along? That just, it doesn't, I mean, if such an individual actually exists and is actually on that committee, I'm not sure how that isn't the definition of bringing bias into the decision-making process. Am I wrong? And feel free to push back.
Well, I think, I mean, I don't know that just because somebody experiences trauma that they can't objectively do something, but it does raise concerns about whether that can be put aside if you can't sit in a police car with somebody. And then also, how are you going to be impacted, as you noted, by watching body-worn camera footage? I did have concerns that if somebody were on the board and was unable to do a ride-along, whether that would give some argument to the union if that board member imposed discipline. Would the union then be able to argue to an arbitrator, and I'm going to be trying to defend why this person wasn't able to do a ride-along, but was able to still sit in judgment on this case and fairly and impartially make a decision about it. It just makes my job a little harder in trying to defend.
Is this a real thing? I mean, I keep hearing about it. Is this a real thing? Like, are there people who say, I want to apply for this, but I'm not willing to be in the same room with a police officer?
I think there were, what I heard.
Or is this just sort of a made-up mythical creature?
No, I mean, I think we genuinely heard at town hall and at the court hearing that there were people who didn't feel comfortable doing a ride-along, but that would want to apply for the board, and that this would be a reason why they would not apply for the board. So
Okay, that's
I
fair.
will say
People
that
gotta
that
make that
absolutely
choice.
was something that people did share. And that's where the judge tried to come up with some compromise to have people experience the ride-along and get familiar with police work by offering to go along with them in the ride-along.
Well, this cannot work. I mean, I'll just put my cards. This cannot work if people will not inform themselves and be educated about what the work is over which they will be sitting in judgment. They need to know. I mean, if you're overseeing accountants, you need to know something about accounting. You can't say, oh, I don't want to do accounting. I don't want to learn anything about accounting, but I sure as heck want to hold those accountants accountable for their work. It doesn't make sense to me.
I would note.
Maybe I'm just too stupid to get it, but.
No, Mayor, not at all. You raised very good concerns. I do want to, though, clarify that there is a requirement that they learn PPB history and learn the policies and things of that nature. So nobody was opposing that, and so I do want to say in
Good.
defense of people
Okay,
who
that's
were,
good to hear.
they weren't saying we don't want to learn anything about policing or police work. That was not the position. They were just saying that being on a ride-along was something that they
Is it
didn't.
only the ride-along then? Was that the
we have
problem,
ride-along.
just the ride-along?
We have ride-along and participate in community academy, so those two things.
Community Academy. And can you describe that a little bit?
Community Academy is an all-day scenario-based training that the Police Bureau puts on out at their training facility, and it allows community members an opportunity to kind of what is it like to be a police officer? So they get to kind of walk through, hey, this is what it's like, and the police actually will play, they might pretend to be somebody who the officer's trying to talk to, the community member, play acting as an officer, and you pulled them over, and what do you do, and what's the conversation like? So the officers will pretend to be the community member that the police officer is engaging with. It just gives community members an opportunity to see what might it be like for officers when they're out in the field.
Okay, and I did that years ago, and it was pretty, I found it informative personally.
Yeah, and I think, one thing that was made clear at the hearing was that if a community member, for example, doesn't want to do a particular aspect of that community academy, that they could just watch. So there was one community member who came up and talked about not being comfortable shooting. I'm not sure if we even offer that as an option, that they would actually shoot a gun, but Chief Day was there and made it clear that no, if people don't want to do different aspects of it, they can just sit and watch.
Okay.
So,
Better than nothing. At least they're in the room.
yeah, it just exposes them to, PPB has done a lot of work on the community academy to really kind of offer some education to folks and give you the experience of what is it like for police. And I think, a lot of people I've heard from have really appreciated that experience.
And I want to acknowledge something about this code that I strongly appreciate. As people know, way back when, I don't even know how long ago it was now, it's probably well over a year whenever we started on this. I felt that this has to have legitimacy with the public. If it does not have legitimacy, the whole thing blows up really quickly. And I felt that the exclusion of police officers and families was a blow to legitimacy. And I understand that has been corrected.
Mayor, in the charter language, law enforcement members and their family members of current law enforcement members are not allowed on the board. However, what we did change was that the recommendation from the Police Accountability Commission was that they also be prohibited from working for the Office of Community-Based Police Accountability. So the office is the one that will have a director, have the actual investigators, et cetera. And so that was one thing that council staff and our office worked together, and that was one of the changes we made that you all adopted last November. And so that
let me ask you a question. If, let's take the obvious case here. We're not just excluding currently certified law enforcement officers, we're also excluding their families?
Yes. That's in charter though, Mayor, so that.
It doesn't matter to me how it got there. The point is it's there. And I'm asking again for a precedent. Can you tell me any oversight committee or any board where the families of the people who are held accountable by that board are not allowed
I don't know
to
of any.
participate?
I don't even know of boards that have disciplinary authority that don't have members from that area that they're overseeing.
Could a retired officer participate?
No, in the office, but not on the board.
Could the spouse of a retired officer participate?
Yes.
Okay, so
it's a family member of a
as long as they're not
current.
currently active, a family member, but somebody who was active as a police officer or a law enforcement officer at some point during their career is excluded.
That's correct.
Does that include veterans who were serving in this capacity in the United States military?
We would have to look at our definition of
know.
law enforcement, so if they were on the military
Yeah, that's
police,
my
then
question.
they would be excluded as well.
What if they work in one of the jails? That is a component of law enforcement. Are they excluded?
That's correct, they are.
What about parole officers?
Where we landed on that, I'll have to look at the code language and get back to you on that in just a minute.
Okay, you get my point. I
I do.
don't need it right now because I can't change the charter. The public voted for it.
Well, to be clear, Mayor, the public voted that law enforcement officers and current law enforcement officers' family members couldn't be on the board. Then we looked at what's the definition of law enforcement officer. And so we took what the Police Accountability Commission had recommended, we made some changes to it. But that definition of what is a law enforcement officer is in the code.
Okay, well, I will remain hopeful but skeptical.
Thank you.
Mayor, may I ask you a follow-up question?
Commissioner Gonzalez, yes,
So,
you bet.
so given your line of inquiry in the answers you just received on the charter language, in your experience as a police commissioner, do you think the charter as written jeopardizes the recruitment and retention of police officers in the city of Portland?
That's a hard question for me to answer because I honestly don't know the answer to that. I mean, the charter was passed, it's been out there for a while. I'm trying to highlight some of the issues that I think at some point might wish to be revisited. Frankly, our recruiting has gone very well, but I think this process, I'll just be very honest. I don't think people listened to me when I said this process has to be seen as legitimate in the eyes of the public, meaning it has to be seen as a fair, balanced, impartial approach to police oversight. And I don't think it got there. That's just my personal view. I believe our legal counsel has done a fantastic job of cleaning up this work, and Sarah Ames is here too, and I want to, she didn't get a front row seat today, but this has been a yeoman's effort, and it is greatly improved. And I'm not going to surprise anybody. I will support this because we have to. But I believe the future city council may have to do some true-up work on this, because if it is not seen as legitimate by the public, by law enforcement, particularly if they are subjected to this, and even those who serve on this committee, if it's not seen as legitimate, we're going to go back to where we were, which was COAB. And I still have nightmares about COAB and what it did to this community in terms of police accountability and oversight. It was an abject failure, and it lacked legitimacy. And I feel like the last several years have been really good. We've had people who've been very dedicated and tried to learn and educate themselves and see both sides of the issue. People who ordinarily I would disagree with all day long on politics, we were seeing eye to eye on the functionality of our police oversight and accountability system. I just don't want to see us go backwards.
But, so just a follow-up question. So,
But I don't understand on what planet in the United States we would exclude family members of law enforcement from serving on an oversight committee. It starts with the assumption that you cannot be impartial, and that's ridiculous on its face. We have juries that are full of people who do the same career as people who are accused of a crime, and they render presumably impartial judgment. And so I don't understand why we're creating a system here that presumes not only that law enforcement is bad, but that their relatives are somehow contaminated as well. I think it lacks legitimacy. Again, that's just me.
That's but you're not an uninformed opinion here as a
as it turns
police
out.
commissioner. And I, just to be crystal clear about the question, fully recognizing the good work of staff, the city attorney's office, that we're navigating some pieces that we can't control, including a federal judge.
Well, look,
But-
I'm on the wrong side of the public here. Public voted for this. And so I'm sitting here as the mayor of the city, and I'm basically saying, I disagree. And I'm just being honest with people. I disagree.
Well, my question though is, with the benefit of hindsight, in 2024, as we're facing significant need to retain and attract police officers, just building off your last points, do you think we've landed a system that is fair to police officers?
I think it has impediments that are structural that could be overcome with the right people and the right personalities and people with open minds and a desire to work hard and educate and inform themselves about policing activities. I think it could work. But, and that's maybe why I'm a little torqued by the judge's recent ruling, because he basically said we as elected representatives of the people should not be in a position to fill those slots, that we should defer to the next council, whoever they are. You know.
Do you think that this system undermines the police chief's ability to manage a police department?
I don't know. I couldn't say for certain one way or the other.
Do you believe this system undermines the next mayor's ability to hold the police chief accountable?
I think the decision to hold off on the appointments, well, I'm not sure I want to go that far.
And I'm less
And it's-
focused on
yeah,
the
and it's-
judge's
and
decision.
it's-
I'm
and
asking
it-
what we're voting on
Look,
today.
I am not a seer of the future. But I will say that if I were a police officer and I was being held to account in a police accountability process, I would want to make damn certain that that process was a legitimate process, that I had every opportunity to be heard, that my side of the case was going to be held up to the same light as those who think I did something wrong. I would want all of the facts to come out. And I feel like when the prohibition against police officers, including apparently retired police officers and law enforcement officers, and apparently potentially ex-military officials were excluded, and then the added step, which just seems to be adding insult to injury, of excluding their families, that right off the top raises a question of legitimacy in my mind. And if I'm a police officer, or I'm a union representing a police officer, and they're going to be reluctant to walk their employees into an environment that appears on its face to already be stacked against them. And then to hear on top of that, that there are people who want to be on this commission that are too traumatized to even be in the same car with a police officer, adds another layer of concern to this. Now, we have to move forward, as Heidi will tell us. We will. But I want the next council to be aware. I won't be here. May have to take some of this back to the voters and ask, do they really want this? The way we were all, these things can be complicated. There can be things in it that people didn't see, didn't realize. Unforeseen consequences may happen. Let's try it. But if it turns out it's not working, then it needs to be fixed.
And if I may, I can speak to one question you asked, Commissioner Gonzalez, which is the role of this oversight system in the police chief. Because of the charter transition amendment, the police chief would not be investigated by this body. It would be directly reporting to the mayor, so that's a separate relationship now, just to clarify that.
Just the
And-
chief.
Just the chief.
Well,
And the other piece, though, just related to your question, is that we also had built into the process a feedback loop for the chief of police to provide their insight into the investigation done by this oversight system. So just as Stephanie was explaining earlier today, that we added in that the oversight system will review the investigations done by internal affairs, we had already put in that the police chief gets to review and provide comment and feedback on the investigation done by the oversight board, and that they'll consider those. That'll be part of the package that goes to the board, the panel of 3 board members that will actually consider the investigation and decide whether or not there's been misconduct. So at least they have some voice in the process.
No, that's very much appreciated, and thank you for the clarification. Frankly, my question is broader. Your next police chief, current police chief, is going to be held accountable for the effectiveness of our police department. He's going to be held accountable in terms of ability to recruit and retain police officers. He's going to be held accountable on showing progress on crime on the streets of Portland. So to hold them responsible and accountable for only one part of this, and then to substantially reduce their say and discipline of a workforce, again, I don't know how this works, candidly. I can't think of any other place where that would, the mayor asked some very good questions about technical expertise, but this is actually how you manage a police department. If there's this complete separation for accountability on some pieces and being excluded in really material ways from the discipline process.
Heidi, where was the union on this?
Well,
They were our partners walking into that hearing, so where do we think they are?
well, I know that, we worked closely with them, along with the community, along with the Department of Justice, as we took this code language that you had previously authorized in a form substantially similar, and we talked to them about, were there changes, were there other things that we could do that they would then support this? I think understanding that the charter language had already been adopted, there was a state law that said that they couldn't contest that, and so we were trying to find a middle ground between all of us, and I think that's what we worked to do, was to hear all of the different voices that came to the city, keeping in mind we had some outspoken community members who had one perspective, we had outspoken community members who had an opposite perspective, and then we had the union and the Department of Justice with their perspectives. And I feel like the unions worked with us to find a place where we could all agree and support not only the code amendments, the code package that's before you today, but also the amendments to the settlement agreement last week.
Yeah, and that was my impression. Did you have more? Should we go to Commissioner Ryan?
I'm sorry to hog the mic.
Not at
Please
all.
turn over to
Commissioner Ryan?
No,
and
it's
then,
fine. I
and
appreciate when
Commissioner
I asked about ride-alongs, it created such a great dialogue. I almost don't want to bring this up because we've spent a lot of time trying to elegantly move forward with the independent police review employees. And I think we finally got to a place where we knew what that transition was like. So here I go asking the question, Heidi, what does that do to what we had in motion in regards to them? Because they're employees that need to understand what this process, how this decision and what we're experiencing today, how that might impact them.
I do think it creates extension of the limbo that they've been in.
Extension of the limbo.
Correct.
Okay.
So we've heard, we negotiated with them. Part of the settlement agreement amendments back in 2022 required us to work with IPR, Independent Police Review, to adopt some language that would help support our IPR folks to stay on with us throughout this process of transition. I don't think anybody expected this to last this long, let alone get extended even further. So there are concerns about our independent police review, our director, our deputy director, and all the staff that work there, as well as the citizen review committee, which is a board of volunteers. So I think there's probably some, we're going to have to work with them as closely as we can to support them in hopes that they will stay and continue to work with us.
The goal was not having a gap in between.
Yeah, it would put us in a bad position because the settlement agreement requires us to continue our existing system until the new board is in place and can take cases. So keeping them in limbo even longer, not only our employees, but also our volunteers who are, don't have to provide that service to the city and to the community. It's a lot to ask of folks.
Thank you. I realized it wasn't part of the presentation, but it was in the back of my mind.
It's a good question. Thank you.
Commissioner Maps?
We should probably, I think there are people who are, I'll pull my question, and I know there are folks who want to testify on this too, so I
Great.
might have more questions after people testify.
How many folks do we have signed up?
We have 7 people signed
Great,
up.
let's hear them.
First up, we have Chris Olson.
You know how I knew this was Chris Olson?
That's how I figured it out.
Nice one, well
I'm
done.
good to see you again.
Yeah, good to
Carmen,
see you twice.
Ed, hello. I got this. Alrighty. Well, thank you for having me today. Good afternoon, commissioners, mayor. My name is Chris Olson. My pronouns are him, and I'm a candidate for Portland City Council District 2. But I'm here today to express my concerns as a citizen about the current version of the oversight system that's being proposed through the CBPA. First, it's clear that the amendments have strayed far from the original intentions of the 82% of Portland voters. In 2020, our community demanded true independent oversight of our police, yet the current framework does not reflect that will. Allowing police to select a third of the nominating committee for the CPPA fundamentally undermines its independence that the voters called for. Additionally, there's concerning clauses that exclude individuals from serving on the oversight committee due to objective bias against the police, but there's no clear framework defining what that bias looks like. Advocacy groups like the Mental Health Alliance have rightly raised the alarm that this vague language could be weaponized by the police union to bar those who are active in our communities or have been critical of police practices. This could deter people from applying, especially those who are with personal and familiar experiences with law enforcement. Furthermore, the requirement for prospective board members to participate in ride-alongs is unnecessary and counterproductive. It's not standard practice for oversight boards across the country. This requirement could re-traumatize individuals who have experienced violence at the hands of the police and discourage many with lived experiences from joining. Even Judge Simon at the recent hearing questioned the necessity of these requirements, and the Department of Justice was unable to provide a satisfactory justification. Though I do appreciate Judge Simon's willingness to go on these ride-alongs with potential board members as an emotional support judge, this is not going to be the adequate, it's not necessary to do this and re-traumatize these individuals. Establishing the CPPA today is a good first step, but I hope the new city council will do a better job of reflecting the voters' will, and if elected or not, I will be back here to ensure that our board, oversight board, truly represents the will of the people of Portland that's free from undue influence and the barriers that discourage participation. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for
Awesome.
running.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Next up, we have Jay Amaechi.
Hello. Hello, Mayor Wheeler, commissioners. My name's Jay Mechi. I'm the organizing director at Unite Oregon. And for decades, Unite Oregon has worked alongside marginalized communities, including immigrants, refugees, Black, Indigenous people of color, to advocate for their rights. We know firsthand the deep mistrust many in our communities feel towards law enforcement stemming from a long, troubling history of discriminatory policing practices and lack of meaningful accountability. And the passage of Measure 26217 was a historic step towards rebuilding that trust by establishing an independent, community-led oversight system with the authority to investigate cases of police misconduct. However, this current code makes a mockery of the strong, transparent, and accountable system envisioned by voters. The lack of an appeals process for community members is a glaring gap. While officers are afforded multiple means of appealing disciplinary actions, the community is left without any meaningful recourse if a case is dismissed without a full investigation. Providing an appeals process for community members would be a powerful step towards restoring trust, demonstrating a genuine commitment to ensuring that misconduct allegations are handled with the utmost rigor and impartiality. Another deeply troubling issue is the removal of the requirement for the oversight system to conduct regular reviews and audits of its operations. This would have allowed for a systemic examination of incidents rather than just focusing on individual officers. Removing this capability is a major setback for addressing the root causes of misconduct. Self-reflection and continuous improvement are essential for any accountability mechanism to remain effective and credible. Eliminating this mandate essentially gives the system a free pass to avoid scrutinizing its own performance. Plus, it directly contradicts the city's core values. The city has committed to actions to dismantle institutional and systemic racism. Yet the CBPA's ability to investigate and address these systemic issues has inexplicably been taken away. This inconsistency raises serious doubts about the city's genuine commitment to the principles of anti-racism and equity that are so prominently espoused. And the inclusion of law enforcement on the nominating committee is another deeply concerning element that undermines the body's legitimacy in the eyes of the public. The perception of undue influence is unavoidable when those who are meant to be held accountable are granted a direct role in shaping the very oversight mechanisms designed to scrutinize their actions. The community deserves an accountability process that is truly free from the conflicts of interest that have plagued the old system, and anything short of a truly independent and civilian-led accountability system will be seen as another empty promise, leading to yet more resentment and discord. And in regards to ride-alongs, I asked you to consider something called the Hawthorne effect, a well-documented, widespread phenomenon that describes how people change their behaviors when they're being observed. It goes without saying that officers will alter their behavior when accompanied by oversight board member, providing a potentially skewed perspective of day-to-day policing. Body camera footage would provide a more comprehensive view of police work and provide a more accurate and accessible way to capture the dynamic and complex nature of policing without the artificial environment created by a ride-along. The stakes cannot be higher, so I urge you to delay the vote so you can take another look at this code and make the necessary changes for the success of the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Tim Pitts.
Welcome.
Tim was going to join online. I don't see them. Next, we have Debbie Iona.
Hi, Debbie.
Hi. So I'm Debbie Iona, representing the League of Women Voters of Portland. I also served on the Police Accountability Commission. Today, I will go over some of the specific code modifications we recommend. In order to facilitate continuous improvement in Police Bureau policies and operations and in the new oversight system, the code should include provisions for 1, systemic findings in misconduct cases that identify training, equipment, policy, and other issues beyond the individual officer's control. Professional Standards Division currently applies systemic findings to cases. These findings should be used by the new system as well. 2, Sentinel event reviews are inclusive, non-blaming root cause analyses of undesirable events involving the police that aim to avoid similar harmful events in the future. 3, performance reviews of the new accountability system should be included to ensure it performs effectively over time. The draft code calls for a minimum of 11 board members to participate in deadly force cases, while police review boards have 7 panelists. Investigative files in these cases can be extremely lengthy and are required reading. We are concerned that tying up so many in time-consuming preparation risks board member fatigue and resignations. The code should maintain our current policy of 7 panel members in deadly force cases. In order to promote trust in the new accountability system, the code should require that all complaints involving community members go to the OCPA. For years, we have heard that individuals who believe police have harmed them do not trust a system in which the police investigate their cases. Furthermore, removing the requirement for law enforcement representatives on the nominating committee will help avoid doubts the public may have about board member selection. The draft code appears to allow assignment of a complaint navigator only in cases where there will be a full investigation. In the interest of providing support to all complainants, regardless of whether their case receives a full investigation, the city should make it clear in the code that a navigator will be provided to all at the start of the process. As is the case in our current system, complainants should have the right to appeal findings in their cases. Police will have more than one avenue for appeal. In the interest of fairness, the city should maintain that right for complainants. You will find other recommendations in our written comments. We thank the city for the modifications it has made since last fall and encourage you to consider incorporating these and others in the final code. And also encourage you to not vote on this today and take the time to think further about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Debbie.
Next up, we have Dan Handelman, Portland Cop Watch.
Dan, a 2 for today. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Yes, seeing you again today, City Council. I'm Dan Handelman. I use him pronouns. I'm with the group Portland Cop Watch, and I'm also a former member of the Police Accountability Commission. PAC was asked to expand on the language in the charter using the lenses of equity and other city core values. The commission spent 20 months doing just that, researching other systems, listening to stakeholders, including police, and drafting a detailed plan. We testified in November that the city attorney gutted most of our proposal. Some pieces of the plan were dependent on other parts, so various problems in the city's plan only became apparent upon further study. The city held public forums in December and July to take feedback. None of you, our elected officials, were at those meetings. That's one reason it's unreasonable that you're planning to vote on this code today. Another is that several suggestions came up in federal court last Thursday that should lead to changes in the code, but you have already submitted to the council clerk days before the court hearing. Complaint navigators. As Ms. Ione just hinted at, the current version says that complainants will be assigned a staff person to help them navigate the system no later than on intake of a complaint by the oversight system to conduct a full investigation. The problem is that, like in the current system, nobody knows whether the complaint will lead to a full investigation or a supervisory review, mediation between the complainant and officer, or be dismissed. The language needs to be fixed. Jurisdiction. The city attorney seems fearful the new board and its staff will not do a thorough job investigating and making decisions on cases. The current system is failing in part because people who feel they are harmed by the police, A, do not trust police to investigate themselves, which happens in 90% of investigations, and B, that officers are rarely held accountable. The latest IPR report shows that only 5% of allegations made by community members get sustained versus 50% of those made by officers against other officers. There needs to be a fundamental shift in how these cases are handled. The code and charter make it clear that all decisions have to be based on current policy and law, so what-if scenarios need to stop driving decisions. PAC recommended that every case involving a community member should be investigated by the board staff. Instead, the city has assigned most complaints to internal affairs, which with no means for the community member, as you heard, to appeal the outcome. The city is also asking the board to come to council to expand its jurisdiction, even though the charter allows them to investigate cases as they see fit. Bias. The code requires board members to make reasonable decisions, including promptly, fairly, and impartially, with fair, reasonable, objective, and consistent with applicable laws, rules, policies, and procedures. There's no need for language about being biased for or against the police. The city tried to argue that the Boulder, Colorado case was different because it had to do with perception of bias instead of objective demonstration. That hardly matters if you do not define bias. Copwatch would like to see these clauses eliminated, but now they're baked into the settlement agreement. So how about a definition like this? Bias for or against the police refers to board members acting in their official capacity and failing to make fair, reasonable, objective, and lawful decisions. It does not include statements made about the need to hold officers accountable in general, nor statements about the proper way to respond to emergency calls or about funding responders, for example. Remember, the current vague criteria could be used to exclude people who show favor toward the police, not just police accountability advocates. And the code sections that we're referring to, and Ms. Brochinsky, are in the written testimony that I sent you.
Thank you, Dan.
Next up, we have Barbara Bochinsky.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Very interesting discussion.
We like to think so.
Okay. So Mayor and City Council members, thank you for listening. And all the other workers that are around doing their work. So the next part is, my name's Barbara Boshinsky, she, her, Portland Copwatch. Strain on volunteers. The city is requiring a majority of members to vote to pass matters before the board and at least 11 of the 21 members to review complex deadly force cases with 1,000 plus page reports to read. These kinds of requirements will lead to either many meetings being canceled, as we understand happens often with the police review board, and/or member burnout. The will of half the city versus the PPA. Over 301,000 people voted for a board with no police members. The city found a loophole and is insisting on putting police designees on the nominating committee. In court, it was revealed that it was a result of bargaining with the police association. Those who remember the Community Oversight Advisory Board, the precursor to the PSEP, know that trying to get police and community members to come to agreement on topics of accountability will lead to dysfunction. These police designees should be removed from section 35.20.010B2. Similarly, PAC proposed not having former police officers on staff to be consistent with the charter, but the city removed this provision. We don't have enough time to detail all the other changes, but here are some ideas. Ensure that the public can know the allegations that the board is voting on, rather than just saying allegation 1 and 2. If the officers are anonymous, why not state the charges on the record? 2, findings should include renaming all 4 current categories with easy to understand names, not the 2 that were decided on by the deputy city attorney, as a pet peeve apparently. The idea of that was that some cases, it looks the same. If there's not enough evidence, that's one thing. If the story is false, that's another thing, but they're kind of lumped in the same category, and we would like them separated out. Panels reviewing non-deadly force cases should have a minimum of 5 members, not 3, in order to ensure diversity. The section on ride-alongs and community academy should be amended to include language such as or alternative educational opportunities, and the city should discuss ideas with the community, not just among themselves. And they came up with some other ones, which I think are very useful, and maybe even ask some police officers, how would you talk about your day? You know, you could even ask that. And okay, so we also feel that the chief should be investigated by this board, and then the mayor would make the final call. And so, thank you for listening.
thank you for being here and thank you for acknowledging the good work of the other
I know, there's so many
council
people working
staffers.
here, yes.
They don't get recognized often enough. Thank you for
Okay.
that.
Next up, we have Charlene M. Wesley.
Welcome.
Let's see. Charlene, you're muted. Are you able to unmute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. Hold on. Okay, Ms. Charlie Michelle Wesley, tribal descendant here on our land that's now called Oregon and Washington. So I'm a former police accountability commissioner as well as a racial social justice activist, and was asked to be on the commission due to my extensive lived experience. Okay, so I've joined this to finally, hopefully, hold police truly accountable. So I want to start out with the bias. That's all I have time for. So I'm not allowing anyone who is biased for or against police. And it is unfair and I dare say racist manipulation to prevent those of us who fight for police accountability to save Black, Brown, Indigenous, and other lives, or who have a lived experience like mine, to not be on the new oversight system or hiring committee. Yet the city found a pro-police bias loophole to allow 3 law enforcement members on the hiring committee that goes against the required independency from allowing any law enforcement influence. Along with that goes community trust. We are all biased to some extent. And for those of us who have been out in the streets protesting for real police accountability, that perceived us as me as being anti-police bias can only lead to incorrect assumptions, like in my case. It's really just radical truth demanding change. So bringing bias to the mix can only create more bias, because by allowing police on the hiring committee, but not someone like me, not allowed to be on the hiring committee or oversight board system due to my activism, is in itself bias. Instead of trusting that we know how to be objective and fair, that's really all we want. So that perceived bias really is just radical truth demanding change. So there could be no racial justice, no real police accountability, by ignoring the core city values, which it just seems like if you read them, you're doing everything the opposite, and they're egregiously ignored. And so how can we have a system we can trust when you're doing all that? So anyway, bias needs to be removed, because the powers that be are knowingly keeping the status quo of pro-police bias, violence, and power to continue to get away with excessive and deadly. This new oversight system was to address racial disparities, not keep them in place. Besides being something that's really extremely problematic is the lack of trauma-informed. And I don't know. It's just like leaving us to have to continue this fight for real police accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for your testimony.
That completes testimony.
All right, colleagues, any further questions? Please call the roll.
Gonzalez.
I've had deep concerns as to what was approved in the charter in 2020, in that whether it provides due process to Portland police officers and is in fact a backhanded defunding of the police. I also think Portland in 2024 is a very different place than it was in the fall of 2020. I had planned to vote yes on this ordinance as a step of good faith between the city, DOJ, and stakeholders in making this process workable, notwithstanding some real structural challenges. Unfortunately, we operate in a world where a federal judge repeatedly ignores principles of judicial restraint, that regularly platforms and capitulates the most radical anti-police members of our community. Last week, that judge chose to interfere in this body, rightfully elected officials, good faith efforts to implement the system approved by voters. In normal times, that is problematic. At a time when Portland is fighting tooth and nail every day to recover, to rebound, at a time where public safety is so central in Portlanders' minds, at a time when we're at least 200 police officers short of where we need to be, I simply can't support. I vote no.
Maps.
I want to thank all the members of City Council's office staffs who have worked on this particular ordinance for many years. We've literally had hundreds, if not thousands, of members of the public come and provide members of council with their feedback on how we can stand up a meaningful community police oversight system. And I will tell you folks, as an African American who has grown up in Portland, one of the whitest cities in America, I very much understand the importance of having a fair policing system. And I will also tell you, I'm a single dad of two boys who are in their teenage years, kind of navigating the world on their own significantly. I very much have skin and kin in this game. I also want you to know that I have, well, let me say this. It's in Portland, it's sometimes hard to have faith and trust in your neighbors, sometimes even in your colleagues. But I have faith and trust that we've come together as a community to stand up a system that will be fair to people who look like me. Is it going to be perfect every day? No, probably not. Do we ever get policing right? Do we reach the mountaintop and there's no more work to do? And I will tell you, that is not how government works. You are never done building a city, and you will never be done building a more just society. But I will also tell you this. The work that we have done today and the proposal before us at this moment is the most meaningful step that we can take to move towards a more perfect city and a more just city, which is why I vote aye.
Rubio.
I want to thank everyone who worked with the city attorney's office and the mayor's office and some of our staff who contributed to the work before us today. From the date that council referred the accountability system to the voters in 2020, I've taken very seriously the concerns raised by all members of the community. My staff and I have watched and listened to dozens of hours of testimony, reading or watching the Police Accountability Commission's advisory report and meetings, engaging with our city attorney's office, reading the briefs of the amici, including those from the Albina Ministerial Alliance and the Mental Health Alliance, and asking countless questions. Importantly, I rooted my perspective and my vote and my direction to my staff for this process on the September 2003 Albina Ministerial Alliance Committee on Policy and Training and the principles and goals that they charted out to pursue over the 2 decades after that. My colleagues and I are all varied in our perspectives and strategies. We may have different ideologies, and we don't agree on everything. Yet we were able to arrive at crucial places of agreement and to strike the balance on what we voted to move forward. And like Commissioner Mapp said, this isn't going to be perfect, but we need to move this forward. And I want to be clear that I, perhaps more than most, do understand the need for the community to have trust in any accountability model. But at the same time, I'm very deeply disappointed that the implementation is now delayed yet again, and the community must continue waiting. And just as a reminder, this work started in 2003. And so it's been 4 years since it passed. And further delay for this new system is not, I believe, what voters intended. That being said, I'm hopeful that the next city council and mayor being sworn in 2025 will take this matter seriously, learn and engage or re-engage on the process, the policies in place, and most importantly, take into account the history and community leadership that has led us to these code amendments. I want to thank Stephanie, Sarah, Heidi, my staff, Angela, Rico, and the other staff who've continued to pivot when necessary and work hard on this all from the start. Although standing up this board will be much later than what is ideal, I do trust that the next elected leaders will have to make the right decisions. I vote aye.
Ryan.
Thank you, Stephanie Howard, Heidi Brown, and Sarah Ames for your steady, professional work to move accountability and justice forward. I know this has been a years-long process with hundreds of hours spent negotiating. I hope this is not delayed further than January of 2025. We know our community is calling for police oversight, and they've been waiting for a long time. Delay is not helpful to public safety. Delay is not helpful to community accountability. Delay seems to only be for a small sector of our population, not the 82% who supported accountability that is balanced, operationally sound, and gets results. Our first responders need consistency and clear guidelines to ensure successful implementation. I look forward to more steps towards restorative justice, not retaliation theater that further delays the implementation of this important work. Why did that just pop up on my screen? There you go. I will continue to focus on governance and moving the work forward. It looks like those who are blocking this progress are focused on an upcoming election, with the hopes of seeing this out of the endless planning to plan and more planning phases. Out of deep respect for Heidi Brown, Sarah Ames, and Stephanie Howard, I vote aye.
Wheeler.
I do want to start by recognizing the very diverse feedback that we've received throughout this process. And it is with some chagrin I note that I am the third mayor to serve under this settlement agreement. We will soon move into the fourth mayor under this settlement agreement. The new discipline system that's under consideration has come to the city council several times in different phases of development over the last few years. It's been discussed in town hall meetings, and most recently was the topic of a hearing in federal court. This code package, I believe, has benefited significantly from varying perspectives shared over these many efforts. While I find the judge's intentional delay of implementation of this code package extremely troubling, our obligation to vote on the code package itself must be completed by this council in the next 18 days. In other words, we cannot pass this to a second reading, and I'll come back to that in a moment. I hoped that at today's council meeting I could offer the dedicated employees of the Independent Police Review and our volunteers of the Citizen Review Committee and the Police Review Board some certainty about the duration of their continued service. Unfortunately, because of Judge Simon's ruling, I cannot. These folks are absolutely critical to keeping our existing system on the rails while the new system is stood up. And it's not hyperbole when I say that every single day that the new system is delayed can translate into months, if not years, of additional work for them. Every new case that is open between now and the operational start of the new system will remain in the current discipline system, which means that we at the city must do all that we can to convince these hardworking employees and volunteers not to find other work, even though in the case of our employees, they know that their jobs will eventually end. It means that we at the city must also do everything we can to persuade our CRC and PRB volunteers to renew their terms against a backdrop of uncertainty that could result in service well into 2027. IPR, CRC, and PRB members have continued to show up and do this difficult service despite ambiguity of this timeline. And just when we were positioned to begin to bring things into focus, the rug has been pulled out from under us. I need to also emphasize something that I hinted at a moment ago. This council has only 21 days from August 29th to adopt code language. Additionally, under the settlement agreement, the new board must begin taking cases no later than 12 months from the date that this code is adopted. Therefore, the judge's intentional delay removes 4 of those 12 months by preventing this duly elected council from starting that work now. That means the new council will have only 8 months to seat a nominating committee, seat a new board, hire a director and a full staff, establish operating procedures and administrative rules, conduct all of the trainings for staff and board members, and be ready to take over investigations. That's in addition to standing up the new form of government, the council committees, and all of the work that will be required there. I think 12 months was an extremely tight timeline, as does most of our legal staff. Even with the benefit of a council and a staff who understand these systems and are ready to act. I have significant concerns with a brand new council in a brand new form of government meeting that timeline when they are forced to start from scratch. Each one of us on this dais was elected by this community. Each one of us on this dais has been working to bring forward a system that reflects the requirements of our city charter, even though, as I made clear in my testimony, I don't support some of it, but we are obliged to uphold the will of the voters, and this is their charter. This is their decision on how they wish to be governed. And so we have to bring forward a system that reflects the requirements of a city charter and accounts for the city's obligations to its employees, its residents, and administration. Yet, an unelected judge chose to block this entire elected body from implementing the very system that we have been a crucial part of helping to create. It's difficult not to use the word political to describe a decision that at best ignores the will of all the voters who elected each of us to serve in our respective offices. But we must move forward. As I've done before, I want to take a moment to focus on what accountability means to me. Accountability demands appropriate consequences for misconduct. None of us, I hope, disagrees on that. But accountability is not synonymous with punishment. It's also about ensuring the process by which investigations occur is honest, fair, and able to acknowledge circumstances in which conduct is within policy, even when that acknowledgement is difficult. The charter amendment voters approved in 2020 established a mandate for a system of accountability led by community to make these important determinations. One of my biggest concerns has been that without legitimacy, legality, and fairness, this board's disciplinary decisions will not survive legal scrutiny and will be reversed in the employee arbitration process. Under that scenario, I want to be clear, nobody wins. The code proposal today reflects the mandates of the charter while also establishing reasonable systems to support the board's important work. I want to thank our legal team. I know they didn't necessarily sign up for this duty. You've done a fantastic job, and I appreciate you. And the community, I believe, appreciates the hard work that you've put into this. So thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Stephanie, and to the other members of the legal team who've worked diligently on this over a period of many, many months. Thank you. I vote no for the purposes of reconsideration. The motion fails. Colleagues, I'd like to move reconsideration. Can I get a second, please? Second. I have a second from Commissioner Mapp. Please call the roll on a reconsideration.
Gonzalez.
Actually, point of order, Mr. Mayor, just so I'm tracking what's going on.
So I am voting with the majority. Since this is an emergency ordinance that requires unanimity, Commissioner Gonzalez was a no vote, therefore he is the majority. I'm therefore voting no for procedural purposes. The procedure I wish to enact is a motion of reconsideration, which you have seconded, and I appreciate that. What I intend to do with that reconsideration, once it is passed by a majority of the council, is I'm going to invite legal counsel back, and I'm going to ask some more specific questions about this timeline.
Is it possible to have a little bit of dialogue here?
Yes, of course.
Commissioner Gonzalez, what you thinking?
I would be open to amending on a non-emergency basis. So I would bring it over to second reading. I think that's within the 21 days in which we have to vote on this. I think it's, so I would be open to approving on a non-emergency.
So depending upon what legal counsel says, the non-majority majority could vote to remove the emergency clause, carrying it to second reading, but only if that works within the timeline. That's the confusion I want to clarify.
All right.
That I want to clear out.
Sure.
Call the roll on the reconsideration, please.
Gonzalez,
Aye on reconsideration.
Maps,
Aye.
Rubio,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Wheeler.
All right, reconsideration's on the table. Could we have staff come back, please? So Heidi, explain the timelines to us. Could we move this to second reading and still be within the required timeline, or do we have to absolutely pass it today? Where are we with regard to our timelines?
If you remove the emergency clause, then of course you go to second reading, and then the ordinance doesn't take effect for 30 days. So under the settlement agreement, we agreed that within 21 days of the approval of the amendments to the agreement, which happened last Thursday, so within 21 days is Thursday, September 19th. That the city council was to consider and vote on the conforming city code provisions creating the oversight board. And then within 12 months of the council's adoption of the city code provisions, the new oversight board will be staffed and operational. Now, I suppose there's an argument that you've considered and voted and somebody voted no that we could make. I do think that the language that within 12 months of the council's adoption of the city code provisions suggests that the concept was that within 21 days of court amending the settlement agreement, that then council would adopt the city code provisions, which is then starts that 12-month timeline. So if you are to remove the emergency clause and then go to second reading and then have the ordinance not take effect for 30 days, we will be outside of the 21-day requirement.
Is it your thinking that the U.S. Department of Justice meant for us to vote on, because there's clearly a majority that's willing to support this. If we move it to second reading, my suspicion is we'll have potentially a 4-1 vote in favor of this ordinance. So it will have been voted on. Does that meet the threshold for the U.S. Department of Justice and the requirements of the settlement agreement, or does it actually have to have been adopted?
Well, Mayor, I would like to either suggest we talk in executive session or at least say that, I can certainly argue that you voted on it within 21 days. I think when you read the next sentence about within 12 months of the council's adoption of the city code provisions, there's a question about whether the intent was that council would adopt it within 21 days. So I think there's arguments on both sides about whether we meet our requirements under the settlement agreement or not.
Well, the
depending
judge
on
has
it.
already delayed us by several months here.
That is
4
correct.
by my count. So I'm not sure what the impact would be of moving this to second reading with the clear public understanding that we're going to support it.
Well,
I mean,
and Mayor, I think.
the work could progress.
Right. I don't know that, I think it would be challenging for the judge to find us in contempt of court or in breach of the settlement agreement when he's already delaying it till January 2nd. So, I mean, from a practical perspective, I don't know that there's a violation. I think the United States would be disappointed in our not living up to what they probably expect was the terms of the settlement agreement. But that being said, they were not happy with the judge's decision last week either. So, so I don't know that there's any practical harm in your moving this to second reading next week.
Maybe I could suggest this. Why don't we move forward on that? Perhaps you could caucus with the United States. And if we need to do something on an emergency basis, we'll do it on an emergency basis. Is that an acceptable solution?
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, very good. Colleagues, I would move to remove the emergency clause from the ordinance.
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Maps. Please call the roll on the amendment.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Maps,
Aye.
Rubio,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the amendment passes. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading, and we are adjourned.